A woman reflects on her doomed life, starting from her lonely orphan childhood. Or perhaps it was when she was betrayed and killed by the man she served. But maybe it was this moment, reborn as a child on the brink of death. Gasping and shivering, the child feels like her body is on fire. A hand grabs hers, a voice promising they're here. As a maid prays tearfully, a man in the background dismisses the situation. He coldly declares it's not his problem, leaving the child and maid stunned. Gritting his teeth, she recognizes that voice and the suffering it represents. The man scoffs, annoyed by the fuss over the child. Horrified, she realizes she's reborn in her murderer's house, as he calls her, worthless. The scene brightens as a voice calls for the lady of the house. Turning, the young girl, Erin, hears her name called. She responds with a curious, Erin looks back, her red eyes wide with curiosity. She reaches out a small, tentative hand. A worried maid named Marie scolds her, but Erin insists she's all better now. To prove her point, she hops around as Marie cries out in panic. Marie gently touches her cheek, acknowledging she seems better. Lifting her, Marie insists she must get more rest just in case. Marie frets about being banished from the Brano house, making Erin flinch. The name belongs to the powerful Duchy of Brano. She remembers working there for a decade, enabling their dark conspiracies. Peeking around a corner, she realizes she's truly stuck in this house again. Seeing the former Duke Raffarin Brano's portrait, she realizes this is before her time. All three of the Duke's sons were notoriously infamous. The sons were a power-hungry fool, a disgraced romantic, and a family-shunning hermit. With no good options, the Duke reluctantly chose Havnik as his heir. Once appointed, Havnik immediately began his treacherous schemes behind his father's back. He entrusted all his corruption to his loyal secretary, who now, as Erin, laments her feudal loyalty. She witnessed his cruelty for years, but never thought it would turn on her. She foolishly believed her dedication to the family would protect her. What a joke. She was nothing more than an expendable commoner to them. Her hopes for a peaceful end were silenced by the very man she served. In her final moments, she desperately begged for her life, but no one was there to pity her lonely fate. She died alone, her body growing cold, lost to the world. But now, as a child, she feels a glimmer of hope. Marie smiles, relieved that the little girl has recovered. The kind maid confesses she prayed all night for her recovery. Marie's devotion brings tears to Erin's eyes. Offered a snack, Erin finds the familiar menu suspicious. Her eyes narrow with a dreadful realization. She remembers these are the same cheap snacks given to the servants. Erin quickly refuses the food, turning her head away. Stabbed by guilt, she learns the maids have been saving their own food for her. She pictures the maids secretly stashing away their food for her sake. She finally understands the truth. The rumors of her neglect were real. Her name is Erin Brano. She is the child of Coloni Brano, the outcast son who married a commoner. Though taken in by the family and given a maid, her life is far from privileged. She bemoans her pitiful life in a dusty closet, eating her maid's food. In her bed, she checks that Marie is gone with a quick swish of her head. Shuddering, she remembers Havnik's cruel voice calling her a worthless brat. She recalls that Havnik adopted Erin the same year she began working for the family, but the girl died in a freak accident before she arrived. The official story was that Erin fell, but her past self remembers that nobody believed it. Havnik was a monster who would yell at his dying niece and discard anyone he deemed useless. Her hands clench the sheets as she realizes Havnik was behind the original Erin's death. Sinking into a memory of water, she recalls being killed by him just as helplessly in her past life. Now reborn as Erin, she wonders about her purpose while struggling to draw. She looks down with determination, knowing this new life won't be easy either. Pressing her pen to paper, she resolves to be smart and stay on her toes. A soft tap sounds as her hand hovers over a crude, crossed-out drawing. Suddenly struck with an idea, her face lights up with newfound resolve. Her drawing is left behind as the scene changes. In a grand library, she begins her search. Carrying a book, she walks through the library, knowing she saw what she needs here before. The vast, ornate library stands before her, filled with endless knowledge. She thinks about the real reason for her visit. Her plan hinges on understanding manoscience, and she spots the book she needs. An open book reveals ancient text and a complex magical diagram. Two ornate magical staffs are displayed, crossed over a glowing crystal. Monoscientists are shown researching and crafting magical instruments for society. Their work led to the creation of a beautiful, sparkling magical city. However, the rarity of mana stones made mana science a field only the wealthy could pursue. Lifting a heavy stack of books, she knows the Brano family never had such worries. With a step, she carries the books, noting mana science is her potential father's only interest. She stops, her eyes widening in surprise. Before her is a messy desk, buried under stacks of papers and books. She examines the documents, recognizing them as notes on mana science and spell configurations. Flipping through a paper, she confirms they're all mana science research before suddenly pausing. A sharp voice startles her, asking what she's doing. Stunned, she recognizes the elegant man with purple hair as Jeffrey. He is Jeffrey Brano, the youngest son and an eccentric researcher known as the Mad Mana Scientist. Knowing he's a recluse, she realizes mana science could be the perfect bait to get his attention. Grr, though he may have a temper, he's her best hope. Holding up a paper, she nervously offers a greeting. He furiously orders her to put the paper down, leaving her speechless. In a flustered hurry, she stammers an apology with a swish of her cat-like tail. Whoosh! With a cold glare, Jeffrey dismisses her with a single word, scram. Dejected, she watches him from a distant balcony, her plan in shambles. She hangs her head in despair, realizing she totally messed up. Slump. She collapses onto a desk, lamenting that she forgot how much Jeffrey hates people touching his things. Her plan to get adopted by impressing him is ruined, and she cries out in frustration. To make things worse, she peeps over a book in hiding. Back in the library, Jeffrey examines the notes she touched, seeing only basic symbols. As Aaron watches, he realizes the notes look like the equations for Elfro. Glowing scientific formulas for Elfro materialize in the air. A diagram illustrates the complex magical principles of Elfro. Aaron recalls from a thick textbook that Elfro became the foundation for all future magical instruments. She remembers how Hanek, after becoming heir, began dismantling the family businesses, one after another, in a cascade of collapse. She recalls how Elfro saved the duchy, while Havnik boasted about the discovery as his own. A flashback confirms her suspicion. Havnik stole Jeffrey's research and laughed at his despair. Overwhelmed, she burns with the need to warn Jeffrey not to hand his invaluable work to Havnik. Tremble, but she remembers Jeffrey only cares about continuing his research, not fighting for credit. Tesk, from her hiding spot, she watches Jeffrey grow visibly annoyed with his work. Scratch. He runs a hand through his hair in frustration, wondering what the problem is. Crumple. As he throws away a paper, Aaron peeks from behind her book, curious about his struggle. Flip. A discarded sheet of his calculations drifts down and lands right at her feet. Russell. She picks it up, wondering if he's having trouble with an equation. He looks over, startled to find her standing there. She timidly approaches his desk, offering a quiet apology for disturbing him. Snatch. Just as she tries to point something out on the paper, he yanks it from her hand. Pouting, she watches as he ignores her and begins scribbling furiously on the page. Annoyed, he turns back to her with a dismissive glare. He points to the paper, silently questioning her intrusion as she stands there speechless. Bang. He slams his fist on the desk, demanding to know what she was talking about. Terrified by his outburst, she can't understand why he's so furious when she was only trying to help. URK. Frustration boiling over, she blurts out that his formula is wrong. Stomping her foot, she yells that he has made the exact same mistake 3 times. Dash. As she turns and flees, a stunned Jeffrey is left staring after her. She runs from the library out into the bright, flower-filled courtyard. The scene settles on the grand, sunlit exterior of the Brano mansion. Kick! Back in her room, she furiously kicks a pillow, venting her frustration. Slump. Collapsing onto her pillow, she frets that he must hate her now. Ring. She bolts upright, deciding she has to go beg for his forgiveness immediately. Stumble. With renewed purpose, she hurries back to the library door. Huff. She opens the door to find a wild-eyed, disheveled Jeffrey waiting for her. Gasp. She flinches back, startled by his intense, frantic appearance. Whoosh. He shoves a paper into her face, his notes now covered in red corrections. He points frantically at the red circles, marking the errors she had pointed out. Kneeling down to her level, he stares intently at the corrected formula. He asks for her confirmation, wanting to know if this is what she meant. Stunned into silence, she wonders what is happening with this sudden change. Russell. She realizes he chased her down, just to confirm the corrections. She confirms he's right, and he snaps his fingers, exclaiming that he knew it. Clack. Adjusting his glasses, he tells her it's time to come clean. He interrogates her, asking how long she's been spying on his research. She denies it, but he scoffs, refusing to believe she just happened to see it. He smirks, stating that his work isn't something a person can understand at a glance. She proudly declares she's good at calculations, but he remains skeptical about her ability to read equations. She insists that whether they're for advanced spells or not, she can still add and subtract. His suspicion grows, but he listens as she confidently offers to prove her skills. Mumble. He considers her challenge, intrigued by the idea of a test. Setting her in a grand chair, he challenges her to find any errors in a stack of his work. While admitting she doesn't understand the magic, she focuses on checking the math. Slide, she pushes the corrected papers across the table, and he agrees to look them over. He stands over the desk, carefully reviewing her work as she waits patiently. Scratch. He scratches his neck in disbelief, muttering that none of this makes any sense. The camera pans over her work, showing page after page filled with perfect check marks. He marvels at her incredible speed, while she cheekily asks if he's surprised. Clench. She recalls being a gifted orphan in her past life, confident in her unmatched skill with numbers. Mumble. Jeffrey considers letting her handle the calculations to uncover why his own experiments are failing. Flash. A determined glint appears in his eyes, and the sudden intensity makes her flinch. Grrr. He menacingly asks her age, and she trembles as she answers that she's 7. He finds her age surprisingly young, but quickly decides it doesn't matter. He suddenly instructs her to come find him later that afternoon, leaving her utterly confused. When she asks if they're meeting in the library, he corrects her, no, to my lab. Bam! He drops a heavy stack of papers in front of her, and she wonders what he's planning. She realizes with a shock that while she wanted his attention, this wasn't what she had in mind. She despairs at the thought of becoming his employee instead of his family. Step. He tells her not to be late and walks off, ignoring her stuttered protests. Turn. He suddenly spins back around, exclaiming that he almost forgot something. He asks what she prefers, leaving her to silently question what he means. He clarifies that he's asking about snacks, and she quietly ponders her favorite treat. Though she dreams of expensive sweets, she feels like a shabby charity case and hesitates. She settles on a simple answer, telling the surprised Jeffrey that she likes biscuits. Squirm. He questions her modest choice, but she insists that they're good. Seeing her earnest reflection in his glasses, he simply accepts her answer. Standing before the ornate doors of his lab, she feels a wave of nervousness. Now dressed in a new outfit, she anxiously thinks about her new role as his assistant. Brush. She pushes away fears of being overworked to death by Honeck if her plan fails. Knock. Determined to get on his good side, she gives herself a pep talk and knocks. Creak. After hearing him call her in, she cautiously pushes the door open. She enters his lab and is greeted by a vast, beautiful, and sunlit room. Overwhelmed by the sight, she can only breathe a quiet, wow. Swish. Surprised that the lab isn't messy, she turns as he calls her over. A small table and chair have been set up just for her, complete with a covered dish. Creak. As she pulls out the tiny chair, he explains it's a temporary setup. He tells her to eat the snacks he brought while she waits for him to finish his work. She looks toward the covered platter, wondering what those could be. A silver serving cloche sits on the table, promising a hidden treat. Clack. She lifts the lid and is pleasantly surprised to find the biscuits she requested. Flash, her eyes light up with pure, unadulterated joy. She discovers not just biscuits, but also a gorgeous, heart-shaped strawberry shortcake. Sparkle. She gasps in disbelief, wondering if the amazing cake is truly for her. He gives a silent nod of permission, and she lets out a cry of pure happiness. With her first bite of cake, she declares that it's absolutely delicious. She imagines herself floating in heaven with a strawberry and a dollop of cream. Nom nom! Completely lost in the flavor, she happily continues to eat. He watches her enjoy the cake, a hint of a smile gracing his lips. Munch! She decides he's not weird or scary at all, but a knight in shining armor. Her fork clinks against porcelain. She looks down to find her plate is already empty. Twitch. She apologizes for eating so fast, and his eyebrow twitches in response. He calmly tells her to wipe her mouth first, leaving her confused. Gasp. She sees her messy, cream-covered face in the reflection of her fork. Rub. She quickly wipes her mouth clean as he settles back into his work. He offers her more cake, but she bashfully turns him down. saying she's full. He assures her there's plenty more, gently telling her to savor it next time. Clack! He adjusts his glasses and offers to prepare her favorite snacks if she works with him. Dash! She rushes to his side to ask if he made the cake himself, and is stunned by his coy admission. She sees Jeffrey as a divine being, surrounded by angels and a halo of cake. Kya! Holding her empty plate, she wonders if he's some kind of god. Back in the real world, she declares an end to the chit-chat as he taps the table. Swoosh! He tells her to follow him, to receive her instructions for the day. He presents her with a book he authored, Introduction to Mana Science, telling her to read it first. She politely accepts the book, thanking him for the opportunity. He clarifies that he's only lending it, and she internally agrees. Of course. He explains that gifted people like us need sweets for brain power, and she questions his use of us. Tickle, tickle. She blushes, pleased at being called gifted. Her happiness fades as she realizes the cake might have been a bribe. Bang! A massive stack of papers slams onto the desk. He hands her the huge pile of documents, instructing her to check them for errors. Oof. Staring at the mountain of paper, she asks if he means all of it. When he confirms, she inwardly panics, realizing this is plain child labor. He tempts her with the promise of chocolate and apple pie for tomorrow's treat. Instantly motivated by the promise of more sweets, she vows to do her best. Humming a happy tune, she skips down the hall with her new book. She muses that mana science was the best way to win his favor, imagining herself as a cat girl cautiously approaching a mad scientist. Nod. Convinced that things are going better than she expected, she accepts her new role as his assistant. She imagines them working together, confident he'll grow fond of her over time. Her fantasy culminates in him adopting her, welcoming her to the Brano family as his cute daughter. She pictures a future of pure luxury, surrounded by an endless feast of desserts. Bam! Her perfect daydream is interrupted as a voice calls out from down the hall. A boy's voice calls her a leech, and she turns with a look of annoyance. She recognizes the two approaching boys as Avalon and Vimal. Erg! She knew she'd run into Havnik's arrogant sons, but wonders why the original Aaron was always so stoic around them. Seeing their confusion at her calm demeanor, she realizes they must have bullied the original Aaron often. She recalls her past life as a secretary, forced to grovel before people just like them at the bottom of a hierarchy. Grin. She offers the bullies a smile, and they wonder if she's sick. EHM clearing her throat, she politely tells them she's busy and asks to deal with them later. Grr. Enraged by her audacity, the older boy growls that she has some nerve. He aggressively pokes her in the forehead. He taunts her, demanding to know why she isn't crying like she usually does. Bam! She stomps her foot and glares back defiantly, shocking them both into silence. Whack! She slaps his hand away, telling him that she knows their secret. She reveals that their mother complained about their little problem all the time, asking if she can leave now. She offers to keep their secret if they stop bullying her, shaming them for picking on their little sister. They furiously deny she's their sister and, realizing she's trying to threaten them, vow to make her pay. Turn! Deciding she's better off alone, she walks away, leaving the two boys fuming. Dash. They yell for her to get back there and chase after her. One of them declares that to leave, she has to pass through them. Swish! They block her path, calling it the Special Leech Road, much to her annoyance. She challenges them, asking what will happen if she refuses to pass. With new confidence, she warns them to move before things get ugly, startling the younger boy. The younger boy nervously whispers to his brother that she's different today. Ahem. She clears her throat and tries to bluff, warning them about what the Duke will do if he finds out. Flinch. Her confidence wavers when they scoff at her threat. Swoosh. A hand lunges toward her. As she cries out in pain, he dares her to go snitch to their grandfather. He sneers that the Duke wouldn't care if a worthless orphan disappeared, telling her to know her place. A distorted memory shows a young, spectacled girl clutching a book. Whack! She furiously swings a thick book, striking the older boy in the face. His younger brother cries out, Avalon! As the older boy recoils in pain. Grah! She yells back defiantly, asking so what if she's an orphan? She declares she'd rather be an orphan than as vile as him, and the younger boy shouts that Avalon is bleeding. Whoosh! She tells him to get away, swinging the book wildly as the younger boy dodges. The younger boy declares that the leech has lost her mind, and tells Avalon they should go. Clench. With a bleeding gash on his forehead, Avalon's eyes fill with rage. Clatter. The book drops from her hands as she stares in shock. Avalon grabs her by the collar, snarling about how a leech dared to hit him, while she screams for him to let go. He squeezes her face, vowing that she's dead meat now. As the book lies forgotten, he threatens to tell his father to teach her a lesson. Avalon calls for his dad, interrupting the man at his desk, who asks what he wants. The boys storm in, demanding their father teach her a lesson for hitting Avalon. The man simply mutters, as the scuffed-up girl glares from behind the tattling boys. Flinch! The man recognizes her with annoyance, and she flinches under his cold stare. Avalon lies, claiming she called them bedwetters and attacked him, but she knows it's a complete lie. Ha! The man scoffs at the lowly orphan as she clenches her fists in silent frustration. Shove! Avalon pushes her forward, demanding his father punish her. Creak! Her father figure slowly puts down his letter. He coldly instructs her to apologize to her brothers. Shocked, she questions why she has to apologize when they started it, as the two boys grin victoriously. He presses her for an answer, but she remains silent, clenching her hands at her side. His menacing shadow looms over her as he asks if she dares to ignore him. A thorny background emphasizes his threatening question about her ignoring his words. Grab. He seizes her collar, demanding an immediate apology. He leans down, ordering her to get on her knees. He demands a sincere apology, and as she looks at him, she recognizes the familiar expression of Havnik. She understands his unspoken threat. Stay quiet, and the trouble will end. Slip. Realizing she has no choice, she decides to give in. A determined look flashes in her eyes, showing she hasn't given up. Her head snaps up in surprise. Jeffrey is standing nearby. Turn. She watches him walk past, wondering why he's here. Bottom. Her heart pounds as she hopes he was only passing by. Clench. Bottom? Her heart races as she worries that he saw everything. Pat, pat. To her surprise, Jeffrey gently pats her on the head. Havnik demands to know what Jeffrey is doing, but he ignores him to ask the girl if she's hurt, infuriating Havnik. Flinch. She flinches as Jeffrey gently examines the cut on her forehead. Flinch. Havnik gestures angrily, upset at Jeffrey's interference. Havnik rages that it's unacceptable for her to raise a hand against a Brano and her elder. Jeffrey smirks, pointedly questioning the word elder. Havnik is stunned into silence by Jeffrey's challenge. Swish. Jeffrey turns away, dismissing Havnik's claims as nonsense and leaving him to figure it out. As Havnik fumes, Jeffrey decides they're wasting time and tells the girl to come with him. She quickly follows him, clutching the edge of his white coat. Flinch. He tells her to stay still while he gently cleans her wounds. He asks if it hurts, but she quickly shakes her head and insists she's fine. Clack. He advises her to be more careful and puts away the first aid kit. Fidel. She worries this disaster has ruined her plan, thinking he'll never adopt a troublesome assistant. Clack. He says that after the scuffle, those brothers will probably leave her alone for a while as she looks on in confusion. Elsewhere, Avalon and Weimel panic, wondering what they should do now that they've been caught. Flinch. Jeffrey's gaze makes her nervous as he continues to speak. He pauses for a moment, looking thoughtful. He reminds her that, as his research assistant, he's her supervisor. She quietly agrees, promising to stay out of trouble from now on. He returns the book that was dropped during the fight. She accepts it, a bit surprised. Squeeze. She clutches the book, thinking that until now, she believed the Brano family only ever protected each other. He explains that he found it on the floor and offers to buy her a new one, but she quickly insists this one is fine. She clarifies that she likes it because it's the one he trusted her with, but he reminds her he's only lending it. Hugging the book, she inwardly sighs that she was just making a passing comment. He turns away, remaining silent. The scene shifts to a balcony at night as a voice calls out, "My lady!" A maid worries over her scratched-up face and dirty dress. To avoid rumors about Havnik's sons, she lies and tells the maid she just fell, but the maid suspiciously asks if Lord Jeffrey was involved. Swish! She quickly denies it, showing her bandaged hands as proof that Lord Jeffrey simply gave her medicine. Squeeze! The maid gently holds her hands, reassuring her that she can always confide in her about anything. As they walk down the hall, the maid urges her to be honest, so she can help. She insists again that she really did just trip and fall, but the maid's expression remains doubtful. The maid holds her hands gently, looking at her with concern. She internally acknowledges that she can't blame the maid for being suspicious. She reflects that she's been so focused on her own survival that she never considered the personality of the real Aaron. Realizing the maid's suspicion is natural, she wonders what kind of excuse she can make for her changed behavior. The maid tells her that she doesn't dislike this new version of her. The maid adds that she's glad she seems stronger but pleads with her not to hide when she's hurt. Moved by the maid's sincere concern, she looks down silently. Squeeze. She quietly agrees as the maid holds her hands tightly. She walks up the stairs, carrying her book. Swish. Later, she unrolls an old, detailed manuscript. Phew! Wiping her brow, she realizes with relief that she's salvaged Jeffrey's blueprints for magical instruments from 10 years in the future. She notes that while the ingredients are currently rare, a flashback shows her rescuing the plans from the trash. Whoosh! She realizes she can commercialize them now and get rich. Smoothing out the plans, she sees this as a financial backup in case Jeffrey doesn't adopt her, but worries she's running out of time. Jeffrey, dressed in a trench coat and holding a suitcase, suddenly offers her a break from her duties, leaving her stunned. She muses that events are accelerating because of her help and worries things will become much busier upon his return. She stands before a stern-looking older man, contemplating how a 7-year-old can possibly manufacture and sell these inventions before Jeffrey gets back. FWIP, a voice from behind startles her, and she turns to ask, "Who are you?" The older man with white hair and a cane asks what she is doing there. Cough. She remembers him being extremely ill, but notes he seems healthy now as he asks again what she wants. Bow. She nervously bows, greeting him as grandfather while panicking about what to do. She stammers that she's Lord Jeffrey's assistant, prompting the man to ask where Jeffrey is. Twitch. His eye twitches in annoyance when she reveals Jeffrey left for the palace days ago. Whooshgrit. The man seethes with anger, finding the news unbelievable. Clench. He grips his cane, lamenting that Jeffrey is wasting his life, while she wonders why he's so angry about the trip. Startle. He suddenly shouts, ordering her to pass a message to Jeffrey. He furiously declares there won't be a place for Jeffrey in the castle if he continues on his current path. A wisp of dark smoke trails from his hand as he stands firm in his declaration. She reels back in shock at the severe threat. TSK, thinking he'll just empty the lab himself, the man turns to leave, causing her to gasp in horror. "No! Shout!" She throws a tantrum, screaming that he can't take the lab away as he looks back, enraged by her outburst. FWIPA man with a monocle announces they are ready, but a gloved hand signals him to wait. The blue-haired girl confronts the Duke, defending Jeffrey's important research. She explains she's helping him, and his work will greatly benefit the Empire. Insisting his invention will generate massive profits, she's met with the Duke's dismissive flinch. She nervously claims Jeffrey won't need funding, and the Duke asks if Jeffrey told her that himself. Mumble. She reluctantly confirms his assumption as the Duke stares back silently. He sighs about Jeffrey being obsessed with the past, leaving the girl confused as she asks what he means. The Duke warns her not to lie, and she quickly agrees. Ahem. He clears his throat, contemplating his next words. Glance. Asked about her duties, she says she corrects Jeffrey's calculation errors. Shrug. She proudly declares that Lord Jeffrey called her an arithmetic genius for doing the math in her head. Flip. The Duke and his attendant exchange a skeptical look while reviewing the papers. The attendant with the monocle offers a slight knowing smile. The attendant remarks that her ability to solve such equations in her head is shocking. The Duke observes that the equations are quite advanced. He questions her about her work, and she confidently confirms she's helping Jeffrey. She explains that while math is natural for her, Jeffrey is teaching her manoscience. He points to her blueprints, asking what they are. Rustle. She says Jeffrey let her keep them, and the Duke asks if they're failed projects. After she denies it, he asks if she's using them for studying. Her determined expression reveals she has a bigger plan in mind. She excitedly announces her intention to make and sell the instruments from the blueprints. Stunned, he demands to know what these inventions actually are. She inwardly celebrates, believing she has successfully captured the Duke's interest. Chatter. She confidently predicts that people will be desperate to own his future inventions. Sparkle, sparkle. Her eyes shine with absolute conviction. Grin. The Duke smirks at her sparkling eyes, questioning her bold claims. Slip, he leans in to ask if she's positive, and she eagerly confirms it. With unwavering confidence, she insists the inventions will fly off the shelves. The Duke listens to her pitch with a serious, unreadable expression. He declares that, in that case, Jeffrey won't need his research funding. shocking her. Swish. Stunned by his decision, she spins around and cries out, "What?" Quote dot. He smirks, reasoning that if her claims are true, Jeffrey can fund the research himself. Ack! She panics, realizing she's made a terrible miscalculation as the Duke decides to leave. As he walks away, he dismisses her protests, saying he's heard enough. The Duke stands firm in his decision, his attendant looking on. Turn. She watches them go, unable to stop them. Squeeze, clutching the blueprints, she wonders about the Duke's true intentions. She is left standing alone in the grand room. Elsewhere in a sunlit hall, a voice calls for "My Grace." Dash. The attendant catches up, reminding the Duke about emptying the lab, but the Duke says he already handled it. He revises his orders, telling his attendant to leave the lab alone until the council meeting. The attendant asks for the Duke's thoughts. Grr. The Duke growls, annoyed, clarifying he's not talking about Jeffrey. The attendant understands, recalling the little girl who cheerfully called the Duke grandfather. He notes she's gifted and bold, a stark contrast to the silent, withdrawn child who first arrived. A memory of her determined eyes flashes by. The memory shifts to Jeffrey's bruised face, defiantly vowing to leave. The Duke remains silent, lost in somber thought. He reflects on his son's defiance, his death, and the grandchild he left behind, whom he took in out of duty, marveling at how much she's suddenly changed. The attendant suggests her confidence comes from Lord Jeffrey, but Flair, the Duke, scoffs that Jeffrey is a fool. The attendant thinks the Duke always gets this way about Jeffrey, musing that the girl is just showing her adaptable, true personality. He then proposes that His Grace allow the little lady to receive a formal education with the other family children. As a glowing crystal apple is shown, the attendant concludes that the little lady fits the description perfectly. The Duke clutches his chin worriedly, insisting that she is still far too young to be put to a test. The attendant is confused, wondering if the Duke's plan wasn't for her to raise research funds by selling her creations. HMPH. The Duke turns away, dismissing the idea because she is just a child. As they walk off, he reveals his true motive. He hoped Jeffrey would get his act together if the girl reported their conversation to him. Later, in a grand hall, a voice calls out, "Grandfather," catching the Duke's attention. The blue-haired girl excitedly holds up a notebook, declaring she has something to show him. She approaches a large set of doors, thinking that the Duke's meeting with his vassals should be ending now. She recalls that the Duke splits his time between the capital and Brano Castle, and is currently there preparing for the annual House Council. The grand throne room is shown as she explains the House Council is the most important annual event, lasting 3 days. The Duke signs a document while she narrates that council decisions are final for a year, making it an unmissable event. She remembers that in her past life, her adoption into Havnik's family was set to be announced at this very council. Phew. She sighs with relief, realizing she'll simply be busy for different reasons this time around. Slump. She recalls a man collapsing over mountains of paperwork to prepare reports for Hannigan, who only cared about short-term profits. A diagram illustrates Havlanik's cycle of failed businesses, which always ended with his aides having to clean up the mess. Erg. She cringes, getting a headache just thinking about forging reports while her former colleagues begged her for help. By contrast, she finds working for Jeffrey to be a piece of cake, remembering him telling her to leave once her work is done. Her thoughts spiral into panic, wondering what use a great workplace is if it's doomed to disappear. A cute drawing depicts her and Jeffrey sitting sadly in a cardboard box, homeless. She realizes it's the end for her if Raphael shuts down the lab and forces her adoption by Havnik. Squeeze. Clutching her notebook, she walks with purpose, knowing things are different now and she can't just sit back. Her red eyes are filled with focus as she holds the notebook tightly. FWIP. FWIP. She gives herself a quick pep talk, telling herself she can't get weak or back out now. With sparkling eyes, she decides there is no use worrying about things before they happen. She feels confident her proposal will interest Rafa, who has spent his life protecting the Bruno household. The scene shifts to a luxurious room where several family members are gathered. Swing. A man in a green vest opens a door and invites her to come in. She stands ready with her notebook, poised and determined amidst a floral background. Scratch. Inside, a woman informs a man that a young lady has arrived to greet them. A man and woman on the couch turn to her, the woman complimenting her pretty dress. Gather. As she stands before them, someone remarks that they can now see the family resemblance. The family members look on with expressions of contemplation and surprise. Smile. She offers a bright smile and wishes them all a good day. A man off-screen praises her graceful bearing, leaving her slightly confused. She's shocked to see Viscount Duce, who is much younger than she remembers, as he asks what brings her here. She states her desire to speak with her grandfather, leaving the Viscount and his aide perplexed. Leaning down, he asks if she perhaps brought a drawing to show the Duke. The Viscount turns to his aide, assuming she's just learned to write and has brought a letter instead. The onlookers coo over how sweet granddaughters are, making her feel rather embarrassed. Grin. The Viscount charmingly scolds them for fawning over her. He smiles warmly and invites the young lady to follow him. He stops at an ornate door, telling her the Duke should be just inside. Swing. He throws open the doors, grandly announcing the arrival of Lady Erin. The Duke, still in his meeting, looks over and asks, "Who?" as she realizes her poor timing. Bow. She bows deeply, stammering a nervous greeting to his grace. Too terrified to look up, she misses the onlookers whispering about the nervous poor thing. A woman explains to the Duke that she seems to have brought something and rushed over, prompting him to call her forward. She nervously wonders why all the curious onlookers are still lingering. Standing before the Duke and his vassals, she announces she has something to show her grandfather. The Duke is inwardly surprised, having expected her to be more frightened after his earlier anger. When he asks if he must see it right now, she insists, yes, and FWIP presents her notebook. FWIP. The Duke takes the notebook and begins to review it with a thoughtful, Swarm. Annoyed by the surrounding crowd, the Duke asks why they are all still there. While the onlookers whisper about her drawing or writing skills, she lowers her head shyly. The Duke firmly dismisses the crowd, telling them they have more important business to attend to. Swarm. The disappointed onlookers disperse, muttering what a shame it is. The Duke questions the blonde man, Deuce, who claims he needs to stay for a report. The Duke warns him to keep his wits. The Duke's eyes narrow in silent, intense focus as he reads her proposal. Flip. As he turns a page, the girl peeks from behind his chair, anxiously watching his reaction. Rustle. Deuce is baffled, realizing the Duke is reading with uncharacteristic slowness and care. He briefly wonders if she brought a threat letter, but dismisses the idea after seeing the Duke's calm expression. Suddenly, the Duke erupts into a booming laugh, startling both the girl and Deuce. Wiping a tear from his eye, the Duke chuckles, finally understanding what she brought him. Ha! When Deuce asks to see, the Duke casually permits him to take a look. Dear grandfather. He finds her childish handwriting contains a bold request. Keep Lord Geoffrey's lab and funding. Stunned, Deuce realizes it's not a cute letter but a serious business proposal. He thinks about the sheer audacity of a child pitching a deal to the head of the Empire's largest trade guild. He discovers her clever instruction to only turn the page upon agreement, understanding the Duke's caution. Though deeply intrigued, Deuce respects her terms and hands the notebook back to the Duke. Deuce is utterly impressed, thinking she has the Duke wrapped around her finger with a colored pencil proposal. The Duke smirks, acknowledging that she has brought him a very interesting proposal. He asks how she'll handle potential losses, but she confidently assures him that he won't suffer any. She explains her recycling plan for unsold items, but the Duke presses her on the initial manufacturing costs. Sigh. Flinch. The girl takes a small, nervous breath while Deuce watches on. Slip. Taking her grandfather's hand, she insists it's a small price to pay to fulfill his own goal. The Duke's eyes widen slightly, surprised by her sharp insight. He is momentarily speechless, struck by the truth in her words. TSK, he realizes she's right. His goal of cutting funding with minimal risk is met either way. He concludes that she's genuinely striking a deal, not just repeating things she overheard. With a confident smile, she declares that he has nothing to lose. He listens intently as she delivers her powerful closing argument. Tapping his finger, the Duke thoughtfully repeats her words. Nothing to lose, you say. The Duke calls for Deuce, who immediately answers. He asks about their mana stone supply, and Deuce confirms they have enough for about 50 instruments. Turning to a stunned Erin, the Duke agrees to follow through with her proposal. She asks if he's serious, while a shocked Deuce questions the Duke's sudden decision. The Duke silences Deuce's objections, stating that he hasn't finished speaking. Hup! As she climbs onto the table, the Duke asks if this is the instrument she wants to sell first. Flip. She eagerly replies, yes. Beam. He promises to send people to help her build a prototype, and her eyes sparkle with delight. A dazed Douche is put in charge of distributing the 50 instruments once they are ready. Deuce agrees, but reasonably asks what exactly he will be selling. The Duke smiles cryptically, telling him it's something people will soon be clamoring for. He pointedly asks if it's something even he himself would want, catching her by surprise. With a decisive look, the Duke gives her the final approval to begin her project. He tells her he'll be looking forward to what she comes up with. Overcome with joy, she beams and gives her grandfather a heartfelt thank you. The story begins under the title, This Wasn't in My Adoption Plan, Chapter 8, with a cheerful, yay! In a grand room, a delighted Erin celebrates what she calls a huge success. She realizes that even if all the instruments sell, all the profits will go to Raphael. As Rafaela presents a contract, she thinks that if they sell well, she'll at least get to keep her place in the lab. Running with a stack of papers, she decides the most important thing is to get the buyer's attention. Sitting at a desk piled with notes, she hums, planning to work quickly so she can focus on manufacturing later. She pauses mid-thought, a serious expression crossing her face. Tap. Tapping a handwritten letter, she wonders why her usual work feels so enjoyable today. She muses that it might be a weight off her chest, but then reminds herself her adoption is still uncertain, as a thoughtful Raphael has shown. Swish. She unfolds a blank paper, wondering why she feels this way. Squeeze. Surrounded by flowers, she clutches the paper to her chest with a happy, blushing face. A woman's voice calls out for Lady Erin from behind a large stack of books. Dash. Erin runs over to the woman, who expresses her relief at having found her. The woman introduces herself as Alphone, a librarian, and says it is an honor to meet her. Erin finds this strange as she doesn't recall Alphone, concluding she must have worked there before her time. She smiles and formally greets Alphone, who returns the pleasantry. When Erin notes Lord Geoffrey's absence, Alphone explains she is there to deliver books he ordered. Turn. As Alphone gestures, Erin curiously asks about the books. Pile. A cart loaded with a huge stack of books is revealed, shocking Erin. Alphone adds that she also has a message from Lord Geoffrey, surprising Erin. Cough. The librarian clears her throat before delivering the message. In a memory, a stylish Lord Geoffrey nonchalantly instructs to toss the books in a corner if unwanted. Alphone relays his seemingly dismissive words, leaving Erin stunned. Pile. Looking at the mountain of books, Erin thinks he gave her quite a lot despite his casual message. Her eyes land on a particular set of dark-bound books. Lift. Picking one up, she realizes he bought her a new copy. She ponders his intentions, wondering if it's a hint to study harder, or a passive-aggressive complaint about how she treated his borrowed items. Unsure, she flashes back to a time when a younger bandaged Geoffrey gave her a book. Squeeze. She hugs the new book tightly, a fond blush on her face. The scene shifts to a grand mansion on a dark and stormy night. A wet, muddy boot steps into a puddle inside the ornate building. Whoosh. A soaked coat is tossed to the floor as a voice remarks on the heavy downpour. Stride. Geoffrey walks into his room, seething with frustration as he calls the Empire's greatest research center unbelievable. Clink. He scoffs that all their work has produced are useless crystals, calling the result a joke. Ha! Flop. He collapses at his desk in despair, staring at the failed experiments. The glowing crystal serves as a bitter reminder of another failure. A man's voice tells Geoffrey that he understands his frustrations. The unseen man continues speaking from the shadows. He finishes his thought, calling the request to identify a charred fragment ridiculous. Geoffrey looks up from his desk, angrily questioning the word ridiculous. Creak. Standing with resolve, he vows to solve it, complaining that even a child points out errors, while his head researcher only makes excuses. He thinks of Erin, acknowledging that her help is the only reason his research is finally progressing, and that she makes it look easy. He reflects on her tireless work, noting she never seems bored despite the long hours. Grin. Remembering her excited shout for cake, a small smile graces his lips. Tap. He taps his desk, considering the idea of training her as a real apprentice. A confident smile spreads across his face as he settles on a plan. His determined golden eyes shine as a young voice calls out, "Daddy," in a memory. A flashback shows a younger Erin beaming as she presents him with a perfectly graded test paper. As the rain continues to fall outside, Geoffrey stands alone in the dark, lost in thought. Erin lies on her bed, relishing a moment of peace. She reflects on her recent, completely crammed schedule. Flip. A maid enters as Erin finishes her reading. Swish. The maid, Marie, asks if she is truly resting. Marie insists that she go outside to play in the garden. Lift. Marie reminds her she's been cooped up recovering from a fever. Pull. The maid gently pulls Erin toward the door. Marie worries about overworking the young girl and making her sick again. The bright sunlight streams into a stately room. Outside in the garden, she admires the beautiful weather. Nod. Erin is happy she listened to Marie and came outside. Her curiosity is piqued by a nearby conversation. She spots a finely dressed man and woman talking in a gazebo. Erin recognizes the woman as Saria Brano, Havanek's wife. She wonders about the identity of the man with Saria. Slip. Saria covertly passes a pouch to the man. Clink. He quietly accepts the payment from her. From her hiding spot, Erin overhears Saria ordering the man to ensure their admission is finalized, no matter what. Saria sternly confirms that her instructions are understood. He assures Saria that the bribe is sufficient to secure their place. Rustle. A leaf crunches under her foot, making a noise. FWIP. Saria's head snaps in the direction of the sound. Grab. Erin quickly ducks down, pretending to have caught something. Saria thanks the man for being a devoted teacher to the boys. Swish. With a bow, the man takes his leave. Dash. Saria also begins to walk away from the gazebo. Saria's sharp voice scolds Erin for not greeting her elders. Feigning surprise, Erin offers a cheerful good morning. She invents a story about following a butterfly to explain her presence. Dash. Saria dismisses her and Erin quickly runs off. Once clear, she clenches her fist, shocked by what she overheard. She pieces it together. The Havanek brothers bribed their way into the academy. She realizes the man must be Hilberg, a family tutor who helped them cheat. She recalls how foolish Avalon was, realizing bribery explains how he got into the Imperial Academy despite being a poor student. Darn, she wishes she had a mini voice recorder to get proof. Swish. She turns, deciding to store the information away for future use. A voice calls out, finding her in the garden. Dash Kaizen, the butler, summons her to the master's office. The Duke stands alone in his study, waiting for her. Dash. She runs in and greets her grandfather cheerfully. Swish. He announces he's called her for an interim payment. Ta-da! He presents the first prototype of her invention. The Duke asks her to demonstrate the portable hairdryer. Press, she activates the device, noting it's not a completely foreign concept. VRR. As the device hums to life, she thinks its true value is in its long-term effects. The Duke tells her there's already considerable demand for it. He reveals that the initial 50 units sold out immediately. He adds that even Duce is excited, much to Erin's delight. She smiles, triumphant that her plan is working perfectly. A diagram illustrates the flaws of current hairdryers, which are bulky, slow, and dangerous. A woman enjoys her new hairdryer, while others discuss its heat settings. Creak! The Duke comments that he didn't realize she had a knack for entrepreneurship. He explains that since all 50 units sold, her interim payment is now a final one. He proposes manufacturing more, and Erin enthusiastically agrees. She confirms this means he won't shut down the lab, and the Duke notes that Lord Deuce will be delighted. She internally urges him to leave Jeffrey alone to conduct his research in peace. FWIP. The Duke suddenly apologizes for neglecting her, leaving her confused. He asks for her forgiveness, wishing he had said this when they first met. A surprised Erin can only utter a simple, "Oh." She assures him it's fine, glad that they were able to talk, and he smiles warmly. Clink! As he sets down his cup, he begins. On that note, Erin looks up at him, puzzled by his change in topic. She thinks if he wants to reward her business skills, he should give her cold, hard cash. Pout. When he suggests she needs to study, she protests that she already is, making him chuckle. Kaizen clarifies that the Duke wishes to provide her with a proper, formal education. Overwhelmed, Erin thinks this isn't how things were supposed to go, as Kaizen offers her hot chocolate. As the Duke rises, she wonders how to make him understand what she truly wants. Erin stands before the Duke, asking if he called for her. A new man arrives, asking if His Grace has summoned him. She recognizes him. With a start, it's Hilberg. Hilberg enters the study, apologizing if he has kept them waiting. Flinch. The Duke welcomes him as Erin recoils, a flash of recognition in her eyes. Stare! She inwardly notes his surprise, wondering if he fears she'll expose him, though she lacks proof. The Duke introduces the girl, and Hilberg is surprised, having assumed she was from an auxiliary family. The Duke requests that Hilberg teach Erin, certain she will be his fastest learner, and Hilberg agrees. The Duke formally introduces Erin to Hilberg, one of the teachers. He explains that Hilberg will be in charge of her studies until she decides on her future path. Smile. Erin gives a perfect curtsy and introduces herself as Erin Brano. Clap, clap, clap. Hilberg applauds her excellent manners as the Duke watches with pride. Clink. A drink is served while the Duke muses. You never know. Kyson states the Duke's hope for her to enter the Imperial Academy at the top of her class, much to her surprise. Hilberg suggests parent visit day will be exciting, but the Duke notes the admissions ceremony comes first. Ha ha ha! Erin laughs awkwardly, completely lost as to what they are planning. The scene shifts to a bright, sunny day at the Grand Mansion. That night in the lab, Jeffrey reviews a stack of papers with Erin, declaring her work perfect. Clack! He expresses his surprise that she finished it all, and she admits she got engrossed in the work. Swish. She promises to keep studying with the new books he provides. Oh wait, a sudden thought strikes her. Her new classes will prevent her from visiting the lab daily. She looks up at Jeffrey, who pauses to look down at her. Jeffrey's expression hardens with determination. Bang! In the Duke's office, Jeffrey slams the desk, furiously demanding who gave him the right to decide his assistant's education. Spring the Duke leaps to his feet, calling Jeffrey insolent as Erin watches in shock. Flinch. The Duke is momentarily stunned by the outburst. Jeffrey accuses the Duke of crossing a line, while the Duke glares, retorting that a child needs education, not work. Jeffrey scoffs at the Duke's concern, sarcastically asking if he thinks she's been locked up somewhere. He turns the accusation around, saying the Duke is the one who abandoned a 7-year-old in a lab. Bang! The Duke furiously orders Jeffrey to leave, refusing to raise another sullen hermit in his house. Scowl. As Jeffrey glares, a worried Erin wonders what she should do. She nervously regrets having followed Jeffrey here without thinking. Jeffrey firmly declares that since she is his aide, he will take care of her future and education. Grit. Jeffrey declares he won't humor the Duke's stubbornness any longer. Shout. The Duke retorts that he won't let Jeffrey do as he wishes, and a frightened Erin realizes this is bad. Turn. She nervously tries to interject, causing both men to turn toward her. Cowering beneath their imposing shadows, a terrified Erin stammers. Squeeze. She forces herself to be brave, knowing she must speak now or things will worsen. Steeling her resolve, she clenches her small fists. She feels torn, unable to give up being Jeffrey's assistant or the opportunity the Duke has offered her. No. She panics, realizing that any choice she makes will burn a bridge with one of them. Jeffrey insists he will oversee her education, but the Duke argues that she is far too young. Jeffrey asserts that she can be taught within the family, claiming he best understands her intelligence. She tries to chime in that she knows too, but they ignore her. A furious shout to be quiet rings out as the two men glare at each other over her head. The tense argument hangs heavy in the air. Swish. Kyson gently steps in, asking the young lady to follow him out of the room. He calls to her again as she stands frozen in shock. Badum Jeffrey furiously claims he is in charge of the child. Badum, the Duke, calls his claim nonsense. Bang! He slams his fist, yelling that Jeffrey can't even take care of himself. An inkwell crashes to the floor, spilling its contents. Bottom, bottom, bottom. Her heart pounds as she watches the dark ink spread. Tear. Overwhelmed by the fighting, a tear finally falls from her eye. Sniff. Kyson comforts her as she hides her face and begins to cry. The two men stand stunned by the spilled ink as Kyson kneels to console the weeping child. Sob, sob. Through her tears, she apologizes and says it's all her fault, shocking both men. Swish. The Duke covers his mouth, murmuring, "Oh dear," with a look of regret. Swish. Jeffrey gently touches her shoulder and apologizes as she continues to sob. Later, in the quiet study, Jeffrey stands with a somber Erin. He offers her a calming drink. Sniff. She thinks about how difficult it is to control her emotions in a child's body. She's surprised to find herself sobbing just from hearing two adults shouting, "Shake, shake!" Her hands tremble as she holds the glass. Ha, Jeffrey sighs, sincerely apologizing for frightening her. She begins to ask about her grandfather, but Jeffrey reassures her their anger wasn't her fault. Droop. She timidly agrees, looking downcast. A moment of quiet reflection passes between them. He gets her attention, telling her to look at what he brought. He presents a large, dusty box. She wonders if he's bragging about his work or underestimating her own obsession with research. Her eyes light up, in absolute delight. He has brought her a wonderful assortment of sweets and cookies. He explains that he was only able to buy a small amount. He adds apologetically that he didn't have enough time. Jeffrey waits for her reaction. Smile. He gently pats her head and tells her not to eat too many, and she happily agrees. As he watches, she decides to start with a jar of heart-shaped cookies. While she nibbles on a cookie, he asks her to tell him what happened. She starts to recount her meeting with her grandfather, but he quickly interrupts her. She looks up from her cookie, puzzled. His expression turns serious as he looks down at her. He asks why she suddenly brought up the name Haviland. In a flashback, a blonde man praises Lord Jeffrey's genius idea for a blueprint design he provided. Jeffrey wonders if Havoc is displeased about the designs being sold, while Erin listens in confusion. Erin waves her arms, explaining she wanted to see the designs in real life, so her grandfather helped her, as Jeffrey looks down with an intense gaze. Jeffrey asks if this was all her idea, not her grandfather's, and she proudly confirms it, adding that they plan to produce the rest of the designs. Munching on a cookie, she asks if that's okay, and he replies that since he gave her the designs, it's her call to make. He leans in, asking if she's sure no one put her up to this, and she nods vigorously, insisting it was all her. He reassures her that he's already filed all the patents under her name, leaving her to wonder what patents are. She thinks about the Mana instrument manufacturing process, realizing that as the mastermind, she'll receive profits from sales and licensing. She clarifies that her grandfather told her about the profits, prompting Jeffrey to pointedly ask who told her to do all this. Fiddle? She fiddles with a cookie, explaining it was her own decision to patent the designs and prove she was the original inventor. Munch, munch. She tells him not to worry so he can concentrate on his research in peace, as he watches her silently. Sigh. He covers his face, admitting she never fails to surprise him, as the scene transitions to a few days later. An empty room is shown as the narration reveals that they have agreed to her suggestion, at least for the time being. With Kyson as arbitrator, the Duke and Jeffrey come to an agreement. She can continue as Jeffrey's assistant while also attending classes. Tap. Someone pats her head reassuringly, telling her there's plenty of time to think about her future later. Jeffrey tells her it's too early to think about the Imperial Academy, though the narrator notes he didn't look pleased. He asks her to tell him about everything she learns, and she enthusiastically promises to get the highest grades in her class. The maid reminds her to tell a teacher if she ever falls or hurts herself. Beaming with excitement, Erin thinks about her first day at the Brano Academy, where she will learn from family tutors. As she enters the classroom, she learns that while most students are from the direct family line, others from auxiliary families are also admitted through tests. Tap. She sets down her bag, determined to get along with everyone, and asks if an empty seat is taken. Her eyes suddenly widen in surprise. A smiling boy with red hair correctly guesses that she must be the new student from the direct family. Step, step. Shielding her eyes from the bright light, she nervously says hello as she walks toward him. The red-haired boy warmly extends his hand to welcome her. She internally recognizes him as Fredelman, one of the few who came to the castle. A flash forward reveals an older Fredelman in a grand uniform, a renowned figure whose name everyone knew. Back in the present, she introduces herself as 7-year-old Erin, and they shake hands, pleased to meet each other. Fredelman's friendly expression suddenly vanishes, replaced by one of silent shock. TSK, he looks away with a scowl, muttering that they're here. Whack! 2 purple-haired boys bully another student with glasses, pushing him and calling him a slob. Erin and Fredelman watch in concern as the bullies surround the timid boy. The bullied boy, Nux Brono, looks ready to cry, and the narration reveals he would later become as famous as Fredelman, but for very different reasons. The scene flashes to an image of Jeffrey holding a glowing green sword. As a robed figure levitates, Erin recalls that mages are highly respected in the Etuner Empire. Another robed mage is shown floating in an aura of light. The bullies heartlessly pinch a distressed Nux's cheeks. Erin wonders why Nux hasn't told his powerful father about the bullying, worrying that he'll wither away before reaching his potential. Fredelman stands up to the bullies, telling them to quit hurting Nux. The bullies tell Fredelman to mind his own business, but he and Erin stand their ground. One of the bullies spots Erin, sneering, "Hey, the leech is here." The bully calls her an undeserving brat, but she inwardly scoffs, thinking, what a joke. Whack! The bully shoves Erin out of her seat, shouting that it's his. Thud! As she falls to the floor, A furious Fredelman stands over her protectively. A woman's voice suddenly rings out, greeting the young lords and ladies. The students all turn as a teacher's assistant enters the tense classroom. As Fredelman helps Aaron up, a student explains that Mr. Hilberg had to postpone class until tomorrow. Shrug. The student adds that they've been instructed to read several books by then. Aaron listens as the same student complains about having to read the boring old books again. FWIP. The student's expression suddenly turns silent and serious. Fredelman checks on Aaron, but she glances at the other student, thinking she's turning a blind eye as she decides to leave. She considers the other student's wisdom, knowing a servant has no power here. She realizes only adults with power or the Brano family can truly make a change. A purple-haired bully calls to Avalon, ready to resume bullying a flinching Nux. Standing on a chair, Aaron cheerfully offers to hand out the schoolbooks. The two purple-haired bullies watch her with contempt as another student asks for a book. A bully tells the leech to scram, announcing that class has been canceled for the day. Stomp, stomp. She decides to stay and read, but a bully angrily confronts her. Swoosh! He furiously declares the room is only for Browno family children, calling her a little brat. Jolt. With hands on her hips, she stares him down, completely unafraid. The flustered bully backs down, muttering that this isn't over. Imagining herself as a smug cat, she's glad he didn't fight her. Fredelman looks on curiously. Fredelman and Nux look at the book together, realizing they've already read it in a previous class. A woman in a long coat walks away down a grand shadowed corridor. Knock, knock. A man with blue hair holding papers by a sunlit window tells the visitor to come in. Creak! As the woman enters, the blue-haired man asks what took her so long. She nervously explains Mr. Hilberg had her run an errand to the academy. He looks at her empty-handed and impatiently asks for an update. Flip. He demands to know where the lab notes are. She reports that Lord Geoffrey moved his work from the library to his lab, and the man asks when. The woman reveals it was ever since Lady Erin became his assistant, intriguing the man. He asks if Erin is doing something special, but the woman hesitates to answer. Wham! He slams his desk, demanding she speak now, and she stammers that he won't believe her. He sternly insists that he will be the judge of that. She finally reveals that Erin is checking Lord Geoffrey's notes for errors, stunning the man. The woman explains Erin solves advanced equations in her head, leaving the blue-haired man deep in thought. He wonders if she's a genius, just like his brother Geoffrey. He internally questions his father's decision to send the child to the family academy. A blonde woman expresses her disgust for what that crafty thing did to their Avalon. Wham! Ignoring her, he slams his desk and demands to know why his father is so interested in Erin. The two glare at each other as he starts to call her something, and she challenges him. Wince. A tiny chibi version of the man scowls in frustration. He reveals that Erin proposed the idea that led to a profit from Geoffrey's blueprints, shocking his wife. She questions how he lost control of the blueprints he claimed were his. Ha! He sighs, admitting he didn't expect anyone to value the useless designs. She laments his failure to secure a contract and questions Geoffrey's motives for giving Erin the blueprints. He scoffs at the idea of an inheritance, but she insists it's suspicious precisely because they aren't related. She suspects they are missing a bigger picture that's playing out. She theorizes that his father and Geoffrey are using Erin as a pawn in a secret deal. Spring. He leaps up yelling that her fretting is driving him mad, but she calls him a clueless fool. After he fumes at being called a fool, she sighs and clarifies her statement. Tap. Approaching him, she adjusts his tie and urges him to figure out their next move. Squeeze. She grips his tie, warning him that his feuding father and brother could unite against them at any time. He thoughtfully dismisses her concern, doubting they are plotting anything. A quick memory shows Geoffrey and the Duke fighting over a tiny, crying Erin. He realizes his father's interest means Erin must be special, and a sinister grin spreads across his face. Having made up his mind, he coldly tells the woman to leave. Bow. As he dismisses her again, she nervously complies and turns to go. Just as she reaches the door, he calls out to her one last time. He commands her to bring him at least one page of Geoffrey's notes next time. With a final threat, he warns her to be prepared for the worst, if she fails. A woman with light brown hair sighs as she walks down a grand, sunlit hall. Creak! Peeking into a room, she worries that she's gotten into something far more difficult than she expected. She finds Erin with two boys and asks if they need a book, to which one of the children begins to respond. Deb. A stern voice from behind asks the librarian where she's been during work hours, startling her. A stylish man with wavy blue hair and glasses appears, coolly asking why she looks as if she's seen a ghost. Fidget. The woman grows flustered as the children explain they asked the man for help, but he seems to have brought the wrong books. The brown-haired boy clarifies they need the second volume of a history book they've already started, and the librarian realizes Mr. Hilberg must want Aaron to start from the beginning to catch up. The librarian smiles, understanding the reasoning, as the children look on. Aaron surprises the two boys by announcing that she has already read the book. She recalls that Jeffrey had given her the book before, acknowledging that people often forget she is just a child. The boys are shocked, admitting they struggled to finish the difficult book, while Aaron says she found it quite interesting. The blue-haired man remains silent, observing the exchange with a neutral expression. He then suggests that Aaron should go play outside with her friends, much to her surprise. The librarian watches with a serious, slightly concerned look on her face. In a cute illustration, the man tells a chibi Aaron that he'll see her in the lab later. Dash, yelling, "Okay," Aaron runs off with her friends, leaving the two adults alone in the library. The blue-haired man reveals he stopped by the academy and asks the librarian how Aaron is doing, adding that she seems to have made friends before asking about the others. A worried expression crosses the librarian's face as the man correctly guesses that someone has been picking on Aaron again. He instructs the librarian to keep an eye on the brothers who bully Aaron the next time she visits the academy. Glare. His gaze turns menacing as he orders her to keep him informed if anyone else dares to lay a finger on her, causing her to sweat nervously. Whack! The librarian worries if his request includes prying into Aaron's work account and laments getting stuck in the middle of their conflict. Questioning if she's now a double spy, she quickly collects herself and bows, promising to do as he says. Elsewhere, the red-haired boy eagerly challenges his friends to a race to the classroom. Clack! A hand firmly shuts a plaid suitcase. The red-haired boy confirms he's packed his bag and ready to go. Peek. The brown-haired boy cautiously peers into an empty classroom. He turns and tells his friends not to worry, as Avalon is not there. The red-haired boy confidently agrees, while Aaron looks on with a slight frown. He turns to Aaron, asking if she isn't scared of Avalon. He recounts how Avalon threatened her, yet she remained completely calm, even when it looked like he might get violent. PFFT. Aaron nonchalantly dismisses the incident as not a big deal, leaving the boy utterly bewildered. He takes a step back, calling her truly amazing. He continues to praise her bravery, noting how she stood up to Avalon without batting an eye. Squeeze. The brown-haired boy clenches his fist, sadly admitting that he can never speak up when he is bullied. Aaron asks why he doesn't tell his parents, but he quietly says he doesn't want to. As she presses him for a reason, he clutches his backpack strap, looking down. He explains that his father is a brave and respected trader, and Aaron recalls that his father, Morale, is indeed known as a sharp businessman. The boy, Nux, stands alone under a spotlight, confessing he is scared his father will think he's a disgrace if he finds out about the bullying. Aaron listens quietly, thinking to herself that she understands how he feels. Ponder. She closes her eyes and thinks for a moment, formulating a plan. Bam. Getting their attention, she tells the two boys she's gonna let them in on a little secret. PFFT. She leans in and whispers that the bullies, Avalon and Weimel, still wet their beds. The red-haired boy stifles a laugh in disbelief, but Aaron confirms she overheard Lady Syria talking about it. She proudly claims that knowing their secret gives her power over them, while secretly admitting her story is only half true. Aaron bravely offers to stand up for them, promising to even bite the bullies if they don't listen to her. Grin. She beams brightly, declaring that Avalon doesn't scare her one bit. Nux looks at her with wide, sparkling eyes, clearly touched by her courage and kindness. Aaron smiles and reaches out her hand toward him. Overcome with emotion, Nux blushes deeply. Swish. He accepts her offer of friendship with a firm and heartfelt handshake. Fredelman and Nux happily agree to walk with Aaron. She skips along cheerfully, celebrating another fulfilling day. Her happy mood vanishes as she stops in her tracks. Through a window, she spots Havenick with a strange man and wonders who he is. From his place below, Havenick looks up and sees her watching them. Dudon. A jolt of pure shock ripples through her. She panics internally, realizing the flamboyant visitor has arrived far too early. Smack. Pressing against the glass, she realizes they're heading for her grandfather's office, and she's not ready. With a determined look, She breaks into a sprint down the corridor. First, she flings open the door, shouting for her grandfather. Thump! She runs directly into a tall figure's coat with a muffled "Erg!" thud. The impact sends her tumbling backward onto the floor. A hand reaches out to her as a man's voice asks if she's all right. Her helper is the flashy, mustachioed man she saw with Havnik. As the visitor helps her up, her grandfather calls her name. She internally frets that she was too late, while Nux's father wonders what she's doing here. The Duke, flanked by a blonde nobleman and Nux's father, asks why she's in such a hurry. When the visitor asks who she is, the Duke introduces Aaron, whom he's mentioned before. The narration identifies Nux's father as Modali Brano, who calmly acknowledges her. As she hurries over, he observes that she just finished her classes. He tells her he'd love to chat, but asks her to wait outside while they have guests. She cheekily asks if she can stay and listen, making him pause. She throws her hands up, promising to be good and not make a fuss. A blonde nobleman, Baron Deuce, chimes in, suggesting it would be a good experience and that she might even offer another brilliant idea. Wink. He gives her a supportive wink, asking for her agreement. Grin. Aaron is thrilled by Baron Deuce's support, who congratulates himself as the Duke considers the idea. The Duke asks the visitor if he minds, and the man cheerfully agrees. Tisk. Modali scoffs, reluctantly agreeing as long as she doesn't cause a disturbance. She glares, thinking how obvious he makes his dislike for her. She resolves to stay, knowing the deal Havnik is making with the visitor, Trunite, will be a disaster for the family. She vividly remembers Trunit as the man who previously swindled Havnik out of a massive amount of money. The memory of the family's financial losses is too significant for her to ever forget his name. Fueled by rage, she recalls the money she had to give up because of him. As Trunit dreams of riches, she vows not to let the fraud steal from them again on her watch. Clench. She balls her fists, her expression hardening with resolve. Her grandfather begins the meeting, confirming that Trunit works with the Felfark Guild. Trunit beams with pride, placing a hand over his heart. He boasts that his guild deals in luxury goods for international markets. His wares include fine pottery, tapestries, art, and leather goods. Blabber. He continues his long-winded sales pitch, but the Duke sits in stony silence. Seated on a chair Kaizen provided, Aaron thinks he's talking far too much. Looking weary, the Duke holds up a hand to stop him. He cuts to the point, asking if Trunit wants to import luxury goods, which the man enthusiastically confirms. The Duke presses further, questioning what role their guild would play since Felfark seems self-sufficient. Rub. Trunit claims his guild is unfamiliar with domestic matters, since they operate internationally. Modali clarifies his proposal. He wants them to handle all distribution within the empire. Sigh. Trunit adds logistics to his request, causing Modali to sigh with exasperation. Thump Modali slams his hand down, demanding to know what Felfark will contribute while Havnik tells him to watch his tone. Modali argues his point, stating that another guild already handles distribution, and Felfark doesn't even produce its own goods. Trunit condescendingly explains that this is about establishing brand value for luxury goods. Baron Deuce tries to de-escalate, reminding everyone they aren't there to argue. Modali argues that luxury goods are too risky due to counterfeits, but Havnik insists that taking risks is necessary for their guild to grow. Crackle. The animosity between Havnik and Modali is so intense, it's represented by a hawk attacking a cat. The Duke Bruno listens to the arguments with a calm expression. Trunit smiles confidently, asking them to trust him. He boasts that no one would dare sell fakes through the Great Coke Guild, but Aaron internally scoffs at his blatant lies. Havnik suddenly states he'll consult with their guild before deciding, which shocks his father Modali. The Duke overrules him, promising Trunit will have a clear answer before his departure. Clench. Havnik's fist tightens in silent frustration. Walking away, Havnik reassures Lord Trunit that he will convince his father to approve their deal. Phew. Trunit feigns relief, but Havnik smirks, confident in his own manipulation. Flinch. Trunit's confidence that the Duke wouldn't refuse his son's proposal makes a tiny Havnik nervous. A shadowed Trunit warns that he has already set aside goods and cannot wait forever for a decision. Havnik realizes with a grimace that Trunit is requesting an advance payment. Trunit confirms it's for their mutual safety, prompting Havnik to warily ask how much he's asking for. Havnik is completely stunned by the amount requested. He shouts in disbelief, 10 million gold? As Trunit calmly tells him not to be alarmed. Step. Trunit approaches, justifying the price for luxury items, while Havannik stammers in protest. Tap. Placing a hand on his shoulder, Trunit tells Havannik not to fret, as he won't rush him for the funds. Havannik internally laments his recent failures, from Aaron monetizing Jeffrey's designs to disappointing yields from his mines. He worries that at this rate, he'll have nothing to show for his work at the upcoming House Council. With glowing eyes and a grim expression, he vows not to let this opportunity slip away. He tells Trunit he understands and will come up with the funds as soon as possible. Back in another room, someone pores over handwritten notes, deep in thought. Russell. Aaron correctly deduces that Trunit must be asking Havannik for an advance payment by now. Determined, she concludes the only way to protect their family's finances is to prevent the deal entirely. Jeffrey asks a worried-looking Aaron what's wrong, and she says she's trying to decide on her next design project. Sigh. She doubts any of the designs are powerful enough to stop Trunit, comically wishing for a lie detector. Jeffrey smiles warmly at her. He suggests she start by eliminating the least promising designs if she feels stuck. Russell. He casually dismisses all the designs as useless, which catches Aaron by surprise. Her attention is drawn to a blueprint for a staff with wings as she asks what it is. He explains it was a whimsical design to test a new magic spell, which he used on chickens. Ultimately, he couldn't find a practical use for it and threw the design away. As he questions its worth, she reads the title, Male-Female Identifier, and thinks aloud. She asks if he's certain it's worthless, his intrigued expression suggesting he's reconsidering. He admits he hasn't tested it properly, but doubts her unstated idea would be possible. He explains the spell would have difficulty even recognizing an egg as a chicken, let alone identifying its gender. He concedes it might differentiate between eggs, and she thoughtfully responds, I see. She continues to study the document in silence. Suddenly, a brilliant idea strikes her. She eagerly calls out to Lord Jeffrey, asking him to explain the design in more detail. Tap. Back in the office, Mudali taps the desk, firmly stating that the deal with Trunit is too risky. He argues that the Felfark Guild wants them to do all the work while they sit back and profit. Baron Deuce notes Felfark's success abroad, but Mudali scoffs, revealing they sell fakes alongside real luxuries. Baron Deuce acknowledges that counterfeiting is a fundamental problem in that market. The Duke listens intently, concluding that if they accept, they must guarantee their goods are legitimate to protect their integrity. Aaron peeks into the room, asking permission to enter as her grandfather acknowledges her. Dash. She happily runs to her grandfather, who asks if she's come to see him again. She shyly says yes, but also for another reason, piquing his curiosity. Havannik and Trunit walk down the corridor, as Havannik questions why his grandfather would want to see him again after only a day. Trunit expresses confidence that they'll sign off on everything today, and Havannik agrees that would be ideal. Full of renewed optimism, Havannik lets out a hearty laugh. Back in the office, the Duke, Mudali, Baron Deuce, and Aaron sit in tense silence. As Havannik and Trunit enter, Havannik internally expresses annoyance at seeing Aaron again, while the Duke calmly welcomes them. The Duke sits back with a composed smile, ready to continue. Trunit explains they've returned to ask for an extension on the contract timeline, which surprises the Duke. Taking a sip of tea, the Duke calmly explains that he doesn't want to rush into the deal. Clack. Trunit sets his cup down, agreeing they must first establish trust before asking how they should go about it. Aaron stands up eagerly, her eyes sparkling with a brilliant idea. Trunit looks down at her with a patronizing, amused smile. She asks Mr. Trunit if he can show them any samples, and he stammers, caught completely off guard. Flinch. A bead of sweat rolls down Trunit's face as he panics over her unexpected request. The Duke asks if her plan is to create a counterfeit detector, and she happily exclaims that's exactly right. She excitedly explains that by tweaking an existing design, they can create a device to detect fakes. Done! She dramatically reveals that Lord Jeffrey himself will be the one creating it, shocking Trunit. Swish. Aaron looks up in surprise as Jeffrey himself appears, placing his hand on the table. Trunit nervously makes a call as the chibi Aaron smugly thinks that he knows Jeffrey's designs are foolproof. Havannik, arms crossed, angrily wonders why Jeffrey is suddenly involving himself in family business. Baron Deuce cheerfully explains that Jeffrey has been working with Aaron and agreed to help after she told him about the deal. Pat. The Duke proudly pats a giggling Aaron on the head for her cleverness. Trunit nervously asks if the instrument is unfinished, but the Duke, holding Aaron, assures him the blueprint is ready and production will begin in days. Gulp. A sweating Trunit nervously says he was just checking because of the counterfeit talks, quickly making his exit. Trunit makes a hasty retreat down the hall as someone calls for him to wait. Havnik angrily confronts Trunit, demanding to know why he agreed to the counterfeit detector without consulting him first. He argues that Trunit's carriage was full of items he could have used as samples, but Trunit claims they weren't good enough for the Co-Guild. Havnik looks confused and unconvinced by Trunit's flimsy excuse. As Trunit walks away, Havnik fumes internally over his sudden shift to an arrogant attitude. Done, Havnik grabs Trunit's shoulder, realizing he must have another guild lined up if their deal fails. He curses, concluding that the Felfar Guild must have plenty of other business partners available. His assumption that Trunit is confident because he has nothing to lose is noted as being 100% wrong. Trunit stops Havnik, who reaches out, hoping Trunit isn't too disappointed in the turn of events. Havnik is confused, reminding the man that just yesterday he said there was no rush. Trunit quickly changes his tune, saying he'll get the funds ready and asking for any available amount now to help him prepare samples for the Duke. A hand is placed reassuringly on Havnik's chest as he smiles, placated by Trunit's words. A woman at a vanity, surrounded by cosmetics, angrily shouts that she doesn't have that kind of money. Havnik pleads with his wife for her emergency funds to cover the large advance payment, but she retorts that his father should be the one handling it. She argues about the high cost of getting Avalon into the academy, and he suggests she ask her own father for the money. Thump. She slams her hand on the vanity, shouting that asking her father is completely out of the question. She protests that people would laugh at them if she were to do that. FWIP. He desperately grabs her robe, pleading for her to help secure the deal, but she dismisses his familiar promises. Nag. She continues to berate him, calling him all talk and warning him that his father might disown him, causing him to tremble in fear. Jolt. He shouts that it's not his fault as she turns her back on him. He laments that his father ignores his hard work, but listens to every word from that brat, Aaron. His wife's eyes widen with a sudden flash of realization. She asks if he's talking about Aaron, and a frustrated Havnik confirms he is. She recalls Aaron boasting about working with Jeffrey to create a counterfeit detector to check Felfark's goods. She becomes pensive, wondering why Jeffrey is suddenly getting involved in the family business again. Creek. She insists they need to do something, and Havnik agrees, vowing to teach Aaron and Jeffrey a lesson. He clarifies his true meaning. They must separate Jeffrey and the child, no matter what. Clack. Havnik's wife insists they must devise a plan if his brother keeps interfering. Holding a candle with a smirk, she declares they need to snatch Aaron away from Jeffrey. In a flashback, a happy Aaron tells her grandfather that Jeffrey suggested they make the counterfeit detector, and he thoughtfully responds, "I see. Rub." The Duke gently pats Aaron's head, glad that things worked out so well. Aaron excitedly tells Jeffrey she can't wait to start their new project. Pause. She hesitates for a moment, holding the back of her chair. She calls out to a thoughtful-looking Lord Jeffrey. Aaron asks why he isn't curious about what she plans to do with the detector. He casually replies that as long as the device satisfies her curiosity, its purpose doesn't matter. She is taken aback by his unexpected response. A look of quiet contemplation crosses her face. She realizes with a smile that he actually trusts her with the entire process. Jeffrey asks about her classes, and she explains they're just studying on their own since the teacher is busy. She eagerly anticipates Mr. Hilberg's lessons, but with a clack of his glasses, Jeffrey tells her there isn't much to learn there. Creak. He advises her to treat it as a break, and she happily agrees. Tap. She taps the desk, internally agreeing that he's quite right. Surrounded by books, she thinks that she's more excited about networking with the other kids than the lessons themselves. She begins to plan which children she needs to befriend once classes resume. Tap, tap. Tapping her pen, she reminds herself to keep an eye on Hilberg and to log the profits from their latest instruments. Blink, blink. Her eyes feel heavy as she thinks about heading back to her room. Yawn. A huge yawn escapes her as she begins to fall asleep at the desk. Clasp. She covers her mouth and apologizes, but Jeffrey reassures her that it's normal for children her age to be sleepy. He gently tells her to go take a nap upstairs, promising to wake her later. Tucked into bed, she muses that while she can run around all day, her energy seems to vanish in an instant. Snuggle. Sighing contentedly, she snuggles deep into her pillow. As she drifts off to sleep, she murmurs one last word. Later, the Duke arrives to see Jeffrey, explaining he has something to discuss. Flash Erin's eyes snap open as she overhears the Duke saying the matter is important. As the Duke enters the study, Jeffrey tells him Erin is asleep and to return later if the matter concerns her. Badum, badum. Her heart pounds as she listens from her bed, while the Duke insists his business is with Jeffrey. Sigh. Jeffrey reluctantly agrees to talk, causing Erin to worry that they're about to fight again. Rush, rush. She decides to get downstairs and pretend she just woke up to intervene. She pauses, a worried expression on her face. The Duke informs Jeffrey that he's telling him ahead of time about an announcement at the House Council. And Erin's heart races, thinking Jeffrey is going to adopt her. Jeffrey immediately shuts the idea down, telling his father it won't happen. Peeking through the railing, a stunned Erin wonders what he means. She realizes the Duke didn't come to ask Jeffrey to adopt her after all. Jeffrey asks if that's all he came to say, leaving the Duke momentarily speechless. He tells his father to leave them be, reminding him he'd already promised to take care of Erin. Jolt. The Duke stops him, angrily asking if he's suggesting he continue to neglect the child. He argues that Erin needs a parent now and cannot continue living like a drifter. The Duke challenges Jeffrey, asking who he plans to make her new parents if he cares for her so much. He explains that he is already considering a few of their extended families for the role. He then reveals that within the direct family, her new parent would be Havnik, horrifying a listening Erin. Jeffrey furiously confronts his father, asking how he can plan to give Erin to Havnik while the Duke defends his other son's efforts. Flinch. The Duke lands a blow, accusing Jeffrey of wasting the past 2 years away in his study. Jeffrey counters, asking if it's not better for her to stay where she is than be sent to live with Havnik. The Duke strikes a nerve, asking if Jeffrey would say the same if it were his own daughter Viola, leaving him speechless. Erin listens in shock, realizing that Viola must be Jeffrey's daughter. Turning his back, the Duke scolds Jeffrey, stating that true care means taking action, not just talking about responsibility. Jeffrey coldly states that, to his father, Erin is merely a stand-in for his deceased daughter, Viola. Jeffrey dismisses the Duke's words as a mere hunch, but his father shouts back that he wishes it were that simple. The Duke laments that the whole family knows his son, Rafun, has been wasting away in his lab, clinging to ghosts. He expresses his exhaustion at watching Jeffrey throw his life away, trying to find a non-existent culprit for his family's tragedy. Squeeze. As the Duke forbids him from playing house with a child Viola's age, Jeffrey's hand clenches into a tight fist. Jeffrey stands with his head bowed, seemingly broken by his father's harsh words. Overhearing their argument, a horrified Erin panics that everything she has worked for is about to fall apart. A small sound from upstairs interrupts their tense confrontation, and both men look up in surprise. Rub. The Duke spots Erin peeking over the railing and gently apologizes for waking her. Looking down from the stairs, she asks if he came about the counterfeit detector, and he confirms he was checking on its progress. In a cute chibi panel, the Duke coaxes her to come down and greet him properly, and she sleepily agrees. Glance. As Erin descends the stairs, she cautiously glances at the somber-looking Jeffrey. Jeffrey remains quiet and still, his gaze lowered in contemplation. Sigh. The Duke lets out a weary sigh as he looks at his despondent son. Pat. He kneels down to pat a concerned Erin on the head, asking if she's tired, but she assures him she's fine. He laughs warmly, telling her that she's the only one who truly cares for him, and she graciously thanks him. With a bead of sweat on her cheek, she quietly agrees, her expression still worried. Squeeze. Clasping her hands together nervously, she calls out to get her grandfather's attention. She stands before the seated Duke, ready to speak her mind. He looks back at her with a patient and slightly surprised expression, ready to listen. Pat, realizing she overheard them, he gently pats her head. He kindly clarifies that the adoption is not to send her away, but to keep her closer to the family for a long time. Arg. He promises she can still visit the lab, but she inwardly panics that the real problem is being adopted by Havnik. Her mind races with a plan. She tells her grandpa everything, which leads to him interrogating Havnik. The plan takes a dark turn as she imagines Havnik apologizing, only to then decide to kill her to cover his tracks. Squirm, squirm. Unsettled by her sudden silence, the Duke shifts uncomfortably and asks what she's thinking. Flinch. The Duke asks if she dislikes Havnik, and her immediate, sharp flinch reveals the truth. Fwish! She frantically waves her hands, trying to backtrack and deny her feelings about him. The Duke looks at her with a wise and perceptive expression, understanding more than she's letting on. Crash! He imagines Havenek's two chaotic children throwing a tantrum and realizes why she wouldn't want to live with them. He changes the subject, asking her how she feels about staying with Jeffrey instead. She enthusiastically says she likes being with Lord Jeffrey, listing the desserts and books he gives her. She mentally stops herself from admitting she's using his blueprints to make money, knowing it wouldn't sound childlike. A hazy, fond memory surfaces of Jeffrey gently patting his daughter Viola's head. Erin pauses, looking for the right words to express her feelings sincerely. With a hand over her heart, she says that his kindness made her feel warm inside, like sunshine. Flinch. The Duke's earlier accusation that Jeffrey is using her for his own satisfaction echoes painfully. She stands before him, her expression earnest as she waits for his reaction. Tremble, tremble. Her lacy dress trembles slightly, betraying her nervousness under his gaze. Her heartfelt words bring a wide, satisfied grin to the Duke's face. He smiles reassuringly and tells her to put her faith in him. Her eyes widen with relief and hope upon hearing his promise. Sometime later, Erin naps peacefully under a tree, reflecting that Hilberg is still absent from class. Her rest is interrupted when a red-haired boy leans in close, asking what she is up to. She shows him the business management book she was reading, causing him to react with disgust. He remarks that it looks difficult, but she insists it's interesting just as another boy arrives, out of breath. Pant, pant. The new boy with glasses cheekily concludes that if it's interesting to her, then it must be hard. He points at her book in surprise, exclaiming that he has seen his father read that exact same one. Realizing his father must be the famous Modali, she thinks that he clearly knows his stuff. Hey. The boy, Modali, blushes and giggles shyly at her impressed smile. She suggests the boy with glasses and his father would get along well. He confirms she's talking about Lord Modali, and she agrees. She recalls from her past life that Modali seemed like a sensible person. The boy with glasses realizes that befriending her could also help him get closer to Nux. He agrees with her idea, noting that it would mean more time with her too. Beaming with joy, the boy eagerly agrees, with a resounding, yeah. The red-haired boy watches them, puzzled by his friend's sudden good mood, and considers reading the book himself. In a chibi panel, she teases him for changing his mind, while the other boy tells Fredelman not to force it. Russell. A shadowy figure appears, interrupting the children's conversation. She looks up from her reading, questioning the sudden presence. The Duke warmly welcomes her, and she explains she came from the academy via the lab. He comments on how busy she must be helping Jeffrey, but she happily insists she enjoys it. Seeing the stacks of paper on his desk, she realizes he must be working hard too. Gulp. She grows nervous, wondering if he's taking time from his busy schedule to discuss her adoption. He surprises her by saying he wanted to give her a little present. Relieved it's not about the adoption, she asks about the gift as he thanks her for her help. He offers her a gift of her choosing, explaining the lab currently only benefits Jeffrey. She internally dismisses asking to be adopted by Jeffrey and considers asking for Jules instead. She stands before him, quietly contemplating her choices. Flinch. She flinches when he asks if she has anything specific in mind. Chuckle. He chuckles at her honest admission that she doesn't, praising her for it. She cheers, happily calling him the best grandpa. Knock, knock. An attendant's voice interrupts them from outside the door. The Duke tells the arriving attendant to wait a moment. Step. He asks Erin to stay for a bit, and she cheerfully agrees. Curious, she peeks at the papers spread across his desk. Her eyes widen in recognition as she spots a familiar document. She identifies the account for Havenek's failed mine, remembering how she forged the data in her past life. She wonders if she can intervene to stop the impending disaster. She hesitates, rethinking her approach. A new plan forms. She can use this situation to avoid being adopted by Havenek. A narration explains that Havok hastily bought the Chadwick diamond mine to cover his other financial losses. Miners are seen working inside the wooden structures of the mine. After a year with no profits, a stressed Havenek decided to forge his accounts to hide his failures from Raphael. She recalls her first task as his secretary was fixing the mess Havenek had created. Though told to just skim the documents, she forged the numbers perfectly out of fear of being fired. She recalls Havenek's scheme was to hide his failure, while Raphael was preoccupied with the House Council. He planned for the truth to only be revealed after the council, thus avoiding any serious consequences. Tapping the paper, she realizes it will be too late to act once the council is over. She resolves to find evidence against Havannik and prove he's an unfit parent before the council convenes. Plop! Sinking into the sofa, she concludes she must find the mind's real account ledger. A blurry memory flashes of her past self, sitting at a desk. The memory sharpens, showing her hands poring over a document. Flash of sudden realization strikes her. She remembers the crucial detail. The ledger. She recalls Havannik personally recorded every deal in his ledger and plans to reveal it at the House Council. The Duke calls out to Erin, snapping her out of her thoughts. Peek. He mentions that it's nearly dinner time, and she peeks over the couch to agree. Rub. The Duke thoughtfully rubs his chin, implying there's more to discuss. Her eyes widen in anticipation as she looks up at him. The scene opens on a grand, ornate mansion glowing under a starry twilight sky. Inside, a magnificent chandelier hangs from the ceiling, prompting an awestruck wow from Erin. Step. Step. The Duke leads a wide-eyed Erin through the lavishly decorated hall. Spring, a blue-haired man, Havannik, calls out to his father in surprise as he spots them approaching. Havannik and his blonde-haired wife formally greet the Duke as they arrive. The Duke notes their early arrival, as Erin realizes they were all summoned for a specific reason. Havannik's wife smiles graciously, expressing how honored she is by the rare dinner invitation. Her pleasant expression falters slightly as her eyes land on Erin. Clench. The Duke explains he invited Erin to join them, and she nervously clutches his coat. The wife offers to call her children, Avalon and Vimel, to join them, but the Duke remains silently thoughtful. Sensing the unspoken tension, Erin tugs anxiously at the Duke's coat. A bead of sweat forms on her brow as she looks up with worried red eyes. Hiding behind the Duke, she concludes that this dinner must be about her adoption. She clenches her fist, panicking that she isn't prepared for what's to come. Just then, the purple-haired Jeffrey arrives, making his way down the hall. HMPH. Havannik scoffs at Jeffrey's tardiness while Erin looks up, surprised to see him. With a disdainful look, Havannik chides Jeffrey for being late. Sigh. Jeffrey coolly retorts that he wouldn't have come at all if not for his assistant. Clack! Jeffrey angrily calls Havannik an arrogant little, but is told to keep his temper down. Sigh. Stepping forward, the Duke chides them for bickering every time they meet. Now seated, Jeffrey looks thoughtful, as Erin wonders if he came because of her. A beautiful and elaborate feast is spread across the dinner table. The Duke invites everyone to enjoy the meal, and the tense family sits down together. Munch. While Jeffrey eats calmly, a wide-eyed Erin is too nervous to touch her food, fearing the Duke's disapproval. Clack. Jeffrey slides a plate with perfectly cut steak and vegetables toward her. He adjusts his glasses, telling her it's the best option, and she shyly thanks him. Munch, munch. Taking a bite, she finds the steak is absolutely delicious. Having finished her bite, Erin listens as the Duke asks Havannik about the Felfart Guild. Havannik boasts about securing the best samples with a low advance payment, which the Duke questions. Sigh. Havannik justifies the payment due to competition, and the Duke thoughtfully listens as Erin eats. Tap. Jeffrey subtly taps his knee under the table, catching his father's attention. Havannik clears his throat to speak, and the Duke turns to him, asking what he wants. Havannik announces that he's secured a site and workers to get the ball rolling on a new building. The Duke recalls telling him it's not time for a research center, but Havannik counters that it's the perfect time. He proposes that Ain could join the center as an apprentice, catching the Duke by surprise. Havannik argues that since Erin already created a business with Jeffrey's designs, the center could directly manufacture mana instruments. Clench. As he suggests it would be good for her to learn about the economy, Jeffrey's hand tightens into a fist. An ominous shadow falls over Erin as she realizes Havannik plans to steal Jeffrey's profits and her along with them. Clack. As Havannik urges for the center to open, Jeffrey interrupts, saying there's something else to address first. Flinch. Jeffrey declares that Erin's permanent home must be decided, making her jump in her seat. The Duke agrees, announcing he'll find new parents for her at the House Council, and Erin's eyes fill with tears of terror. As Havannik listens, Jeffrey's cold gaze is fixed on a horrified Erin. With trembling lips and a pained expression, Erin feels her world beginning to crumble. Havannik's wife reaches out a hand, cautiously addressing the Duke. Feigning surprise, she asks what he means by one of the candidates, and if there is anyone else besides them. The Duke raises his glass with a calm, knowing smile. He explains that if Erin goes to an extended family, she can no longer stay in the duchy. Looking directly at Havannik and his wife, he states his preference that they, his direct family, take her in. Havnik beams with delight, eagerly agreeing that it would be a blessing for them to adopt her. Clench. Beneath the table, Jeffrey's hands clench his pants in frustration, realizing this was his father's plan all along. In a hazy memory, she recalls the Duke's promise to find her a comfortable home. Slumped in a grand chair, she resolves to use her one wish to escape her predicament. With newfound determination, she decides to choose Medali's family as her alternative. The man with purple hair questions her choice, asking Medali as she looks back in surprise. The Duke explains that Medali is a trustworthy man in their guild, so he feels confident leaving Aaron in his care. A brief memory shows a family sitting together on a couch. The Duke recalls that Medali's son is Aaron's age and seemed happy at the thought of her joining their family. In the memory, the boy with glasses beams, finally understanding something Nux had said. Aaron's eyes widen as she puts the pieces together. Havena's wife seizes his arm, calling Jeffrey an eyesore before asking the Duke why he's waiting for the House Council to decide Aaron's fate. She argues that since the Duke prefers direct family, it would be best for them to adopt Aaron immediately so she can settle in. Looking at Jeffrey, she suggests he would also prefer it if they took Aaron off his hands. Poke. A fork touches a piece of steak, and across the table, Havnik's wife flinches in surprise. The Duke dismisses Jeffrey as a rascal who never participates in family affairs, stating he doesn't expect a proper opinion from him. He then tells Havnik and his wife their hands are already full with 2 children, and he wants both families to have time to consider the matter. Gasp! Turning to a startled Aaron, the Duke asks her to think it over as well, and she nervously agrees. The Duke concludes the discussion for now, deciding to revisit it at the House Council as Aaron glances down sadly. Aaron and Jeffrey sit in silence at the elaborate dinner table. Back in her room, Aaron holds a pen under her nose, realizing the situation has come to this. Doodling stick figures, she notes that Medali was the Duke's backup plan. Crackle! She visualizes the tense relationship between Medali and Havnik, realizing it doesn't bode well for her. She concludes that choosing Medali means she will have to burn her bridges with Havnik too. Imagining herself as a chess piece, she concedes that the Duke seems to have chosen a good family for her. She continues to study her simple drawings, weighing her options. A memory flashes of Jeffrey sitting silently and pensively at the dinner table. Squeak! Decisively, she scratches out the doodle representing Jeffrey, abandoning the plan to be adopted by him. With a somber expression, she looks down, lost in thought. FWIP. Circling her other 2 options, she forms a new plan, noting that Medali's tension with Havnik makes him a double-edged sword. Acknowledging the Duke's preference for direct family, she resolves to create a plan that completely removes Havnik as an option. The doodle for Jeffrey is now highlighted within a triangle, perhaps signifying a different kind of role. Sigh. Aaron lets out a soft sigh, staring at her sketchbook. Deciding to sleep on it, she looks out at her quiet, moonlit room. As she turns over in bed, she suddenly remembers getting her hands on Havnik's ledger in her past life. Drifting into her memories, she tries to recall what a ghostly silhouette of Havnik once told her. In the memory, Havnik scoffs at the idea of keeping the important ledger in an obvious place where it could be stolen. He had told her he was going to the academy and that a certain person there would have the ledger. Spring. She bolts upright in bed, the realization hitting her the academy. She recalls someone at the academy handed Havnik the ledger, someone who had been there a long time. A memory of an older, smiling man holding a book surfaces, and she wonders if Hilberg has the ledger. The new day begins as sunlight streams through a window. In a classroom, the teacher, Hilberg, smiles at his students and asks if they understand the lesson. Whisper. The boy with glasses whispers to his red-haired friend, Fredelman. In a cute chibi doodle, Fredelman asks the boy with glasses if he did something to make Aaron angry, which he quickly denies. Glance. The boy with glasses glances worriedly over his shoulder. Glare. He wonders why Aaron looks so scary, as she glares intensely while writing, completely focused on her task. Frustrated, she presses her pencil to the paper, thinking she can't find what she's looking for. Rummage, rummage. A cat-eared chibi Aaron frantically searches through a desk drawer. She tries to recall a specific, expensive-looking leather book, but her memory is frustratingly fuzzy. She reconsiders, realizing Havnik wouldn't keep something so important far away with the council meeting approaching. Scratch. Concluding she's on the wrong track, she begins to formulate a new plan. Phew. At her desk, Aaron lets out a breath of relief. Clang. Elsewhere, A frustrated voice curses as something shatters violently. Huff huff. In a trashed room, a panting Habenik clutches his head, certain the item was in his drawer. Bang! He kicks the table in fury, demanding to know how the ledger could have just disappeared. With a menacing glare, he vows that whoever took it is dead once he finds them. In a library, a girl with light brown hair finds a mysterious book and wonders where it came from. She holds the ornate red book, which is bound with leather straps and a golden clasp. Flip. Finding it strange, she notes that the book has no title, author, or categorization number. Fwish. She opens the book, curious about who might have brought it in. Drop. The book falls to the floor, its contents startling her. Seeing a list of expensive fees, she pauses in thought. Swish. She picks it up, realizing it's not a book but a handwritten ledger. Flipping through the pages, she questions if it's an account book for one of the Branos. Her eyes widen in shock as she covers her mouth, horrified by its contents. Meanwhile, Erin slumps over her desk in defeat, unable to find what she was looking for. Flop. Exhausted, she recalls checking to see if anyone besides Hilberg worked at the academy. A simple diagram shows that Hilberg oversees everyone at the main house and annex. Convinced Hilberg has the ledger, she despairs, having run out of places to search. Fwish. Suddenly, a voice tells people to introduce themselves, and Erin peeks out from her chair. 3 new maids in crisp uniforms stand before her. Swoosh. 2 maids, Hisai and Essie, introduce themselves while the third fawns over how precious Erin is. Erin asks her head maid, Marie, who they are, and Marie explains they are new maids hired by the Duke. As Marie expresses her relief, a chibi Erin processes the new information. The 3 new maids smile warmly and eagerly at Erin. Glance. Erin asks to be left alone to read, and the maids look on with concern. They nod in understanding as she says she doesn't have any tasks for them. Slip. Marie approaches, reminding Erin that she's been cooped up in her room all morning. She suggests they go for a walk on such a beautiful day, much to the other maids' delight. Wish! The maids enthusiastically offer to play games, but Erin would rather focus on her strategy. Sparkle! Seeing their insistent, glittering eyes, she realizes they won't be easily dissuaded. Flip. She relents, agreeing to go out after returning a book, but the maids immediately offer to join her. Dash, no. It's okay, she exclaims, rushing off to the library alone as the maids watch in surprise. The maids decide not to follow, wanting to give the seemingly awkward Erin some space. Marie explains that Erin is very reserved and has only just begun making friends. Hisai admits they use the house council as an excuse, knowing Erin would have rejected them if they'd offered to be playmates. The maids reaffirm their duty to support Erin and help her get plenty of rest. Erin walks alone through a grand, empty hall on her way to the library. Creak. She peeks through the library doors, planning to continue her work inside. Crash. Hearing a loud noise from within, she pauses in confusion. The librarian peeks out from behind a bookshelf and happily welcomes Lady Erin. The librarian asks if she's looking for a book, but Erin says she just came to read. After telling Erin she'll be at the front desk, the librarian walks away. Erin watches her go, a flicker of confusion on her face. Wait, Erin spots the distinctive red ledger tucked under the librarian's arm. Her eyes widen in shock as she realizes Alphone, the librarian, has the ledger. Frozen in place, she stares, questioning why Alphone would possess such a dangerous item. By the shelves, Alphone looks through the ledger herself, a puzzled expression on her face. Reading the contents, she questions the millions of gold spent on a botany book and an information guild. She grows suspicious, finding the prices for the specimens and the guild payment far too high. Badum, badum. Her heart pounds as she sees entries marked done, realizing the vague contracts seem designed to hide something. Creak. Alphone peeks nervously into the room, startled by something. A small Erin peeks curiously from behind an ornate golden pillar. Dash Alphonse rushes forward to warmly welcome Lady Erin. Smiling, Alphone admits she was startled and asks if Erin is looking for something, but Erin says she just came to read. Alphone cheerfully tells Erin to call if she needs anything, and a reserved Erin quietly agrees. At her desk, Alphonse sets the red ledger down, hoping she didn't seem suspicious. She recalls her surprise at finding the book and decides to put it back as soon as Lady Erin leaves. Pop Jolt Erin suddenly appears over the desk, startling Alphone by calling her name. With an innocent smile, Erin asks what the red leather book is. As Erin praises the book's pretty cover and asks to see it, Alphonse panics internally. Alphonse gently refuses, explaining it's not a children's book, and Erin agrees to find something else, much to the librarian's immense relief. Alphonse waits alone at her desk in the now silent library. Swish. She quickly ducks down behind the desk, hiding the book from view. Watching from her hiding spot, Erin correctly deduces that Alphonse has hidden the ledger in her desk. Erin spins in her chair, confident that the librarian's nervous behavior proves she knows the book's contents. Holding a plain black book, a bead of sweat rolls down Erin's cheek as she strategizes. Recalling Alphone's kind expression, she concludes that the librarian is the perfect agent for Havenick. Looking downcast, Erin admits to herself that she feels a bit betrayed. Squeeze. She clenches her dress, disappointed that she had started to think Alphonse was a good person. Looking around the room, Erin calls out, asking if the librarian is present. Hilberg appears and instructs the librarian to go help someone outside, prompting her to ask for details. He vaguely tells her a carriage is waiting outside, and that she will understand once she gets there. Dash. He walks away after a final glance, leaving a pensive Alphonse behind. Step. Hilberg walks across the tiled floor, away from the desk where the ledger now sits. Dash. A tiny Erin scurries away in a panic, realizing he's headed her way. Rummage. Hilberg frantically searches a bookshelf, wondering in disbelief how this could be. Peeking from behind a column, a new thought suddenly occurs to Erin. Hilberg stops short, stammering Lady Erin's name as he finds her standing in the open. Fidget, squirm, as he asks if she is looking for a book. Erin nervously agrees. Tapping her chin, Erin innocently asks why he didn't just ask Alphonse for help. Flustered, Hilberg waves his hands and insists there's no need for that. Fwish. He nervously adjusts his collar, struggling to find the right words. He lets out a loud, awkward laugh as Erin smiles sweetly up at him. Bowing, Hilberg says he'll return to the academy to wait for the librarian and politely bids her farewell. Her sweet facade drops as she watches him leave, her expression turning serious and contemplative. She recalls his caution in sending the librarian away on a vague errand. She then remembers his panic upon failing to find something that should have been there. The conclusion is clear. Something he had hidden in the library has vanished. Clenching her fist, she wonders what sort of thing a person would hide in a library. She recalls that the Brano family's private library is strictly guarded, with access limited to direct relatives. A memory from her past life reveals that even as a secretary, she needed special permission for every single visit. She deduces that other servants avoided the library, and the only family member who frequented it was Jeffrey. It was the perfect place to hide something furtive, so long as it was kept away from Jeffrey's usual sections. Holding a children's history book, she realizes the ledger was hidden inside something Jeffrey would never dream of reading. She ponders why Alphonse risked carrying the ledger around, concluding the librarian must know its dangerous contents. Plop! She sits down, frustrated that she can't pinpoint the exact reason for Alphonse's risky behavior. Holding a book, she suddenly remembers that this is the first time she has ever met Alphonse. A memory of the previous librarian, a kind-faced older man with glasses, comes to mind. She reflects that Alphonse was handpicked for her talent and wouldn't abandon her prestigious post without a compelling reason. And yet, the Brano family replaced their librarian without a word, deepening the mystery surrounding the ledger. She remembers that Hilberg was still at the castle when the boys left, meaning the ledger incident didn't affect him. As she puts her finger to her chin, a new thought begins to form. She considers the two possible fates for Alphonse in her past life: banishment for misusing the ledger, or elimination by Havenick for discovering it. In a past memory, a maid named Lisa tells a much younger Erin that she's all ready for bed. Lisa holds up a magical hairdryer, marveling at how handy the instrument is. A tiny Erin agrees, happily noting how fast the device dries her hair. Jump! Erin reveals it's Lord Jeffrey's invention, startling Lisa, who almost calls him a mad scientist before correcting herself. Quiver. As a terrified Lisa worries about breaking the device, Erin skips past, telling her not to worry so much. Swish. Tucked into bed, Erin insists that Jeffrey has a kind side, much to Lisa's disbelief. When Erin adds that he bakes her sweets every day, a shocked Lisa questions if he makes them himself. Vowing not to leave her alone, Lisa says she'll stay until she falls asleep, and Erin quietly agrees. Lisa smiles warmly, thinking the maids will probably take turns watching over the young lady every night. Later that night, Erin calls out from her bed, asking Lisa for help with something. Lisa follows the young girl into the dark, expansive library, lighting the way with a lantern. Erin excitedly points to a large book on a low shelf, confirming it's the one she wants. Lisa asks if she needs anything else, and Erin looks around thoughtfully. Her sharp eyes scan the library as she puts her plan into motion. FWIP. She points up to a high shelf, asking Lisa to retrieve a blue book for her. Lisa confirms the book is on the second floor, and Erin gives a cheerful, yeah, step. As Lisa walks off to get a stepladder, Erin promises to wait right there. The moment she's alone, her expression turns serious and focused. She recalls Alphone's cheerful attitude, concluding that the librarian must have only found the ledger today. Creak. She reasons that her own interest in the book is what made Alphone decide against putting it back. Holding a small lantern, Erin deduces that Alphone couldn't have taken the ledger home with her. With determined eyes, she imagines what Alphone would do in that situation. She concludes that the safest hiding place would be right under the librarian's desk. Peeking under the desk, she finds the ledger and happily exclaims, "Found it!" Flip. She opens the ornate red book, confirming it is indeed Havnik's ledger. FWIP. With a clever move, she slips the red ledger in between the other books she gathered. Ta-da! She proudly holds up the stack of books, her prize perfectly concealed within. Clench. She clenches her fist with a triumphant, silent laugh at Havnik's expense. Dash. She rushes back over to Lisa, startling the maid with her sudden return. Nod, nod. Erin happily shows Lisa that she has found another book while she was gone. She clutches the stack of books, including the hidden ledger, with determination. Erin insists these are the most important books, and Lisa, noting their weight, offers to carry them for her. As they walk, Lisa calls out to Lady Erin, who turns with a curious, Lisa asks if she really enjoys reading, and Erin confirms that she does, of course. Concerned, Lisa asks if she's forcing herself, but Erin insists that she genuinely wants to read because it's fun. Lisa looks down in silence, moved and impressed by the young lady's sincerity. Calling her impressive, Lisa listens as Erin innocently asks if she finds reading difficult. Wave. Lisa cheerfully admits she can't read or write at all, explaining that it's why she had to leave her post as a librarian maid. When Erin asks about the role, Lisa clarifies that she used to be in charge of cleaning the library. She remembers how she had once hoped to teach herself how to read while she worked there. However, a flashback shows her overwhelmed by the stacks of advanced books, which were too difficult for a beginner. Ultimately, she was reassigned after it became clear she couldn't even read her own name. Erin listens to her story, a thoughtful silence falling between them. Confused by the quiet, a slightly flustered Lisa asks, "Pardon me." Erin offers to teach her, explaining that learning to write her name and read simple books isn't that difficult. Wow. Touched Lisa says Erin seems just like an older sister or a teacher, making the young girl flinch in surprise. The two stand together, sharing a warm and promising moment of newfound friendship. A maid asks a young, purple-haired girl if she wants to become a researcher like Lord Geoffrey. The maid excitedly suggests becoming a Grand Guildmaster as an alternative. Snap. The girl reveals her true dream is to be so rich she never has to work. The maid laughs, telling her she will have to study hard to achieve that goal. The maid reflects that the girl is much friendlier than she was led to believe. Spring. She vows to do her best to help the girl fulfill her dream. In exchange, she asks the girl to promise to spend her free time with them, which she does. Spin the scene transitions with a close-up of someone turning. The purple-haired girl wakes up, looking cheerful and bright in the morning sun. A different maid greets her, and the girl happily announces she feels great. The maid observes that someone's in a good mood today. Announcing she slept well, the girl giggles shyly, leaving the maid puzzled. When asked about her library adventure, the girl calls it a fun and special experience. Phew. The maid, Essie, fusses over the girl, calling her adorable as a chibi version thanks her, and heads for the academy. Essie calls out for the girl to wait as she runs toward the door. Essie offers to walk her there, much to the girl's surprise. Essie explains a maid will now escort her, though the girl insists she's fine alone. Chatter. They arrive to find the academy grounds crowded with elegant guests. Wow. As the girl marvels at the scene, Essie explains extended family are staying in the annex. The girl correctly guesses it's because of the house council meeting. Tremble, tremble. Essie looks nervous as she confirms the girl's suspicion. Essie gently prompts her that it's time to go to class. The girl reflects that the upcoming council feels different. Before, Family events were just an avalanche of work for her as a secretary. But now that she's part of the family, she thinks it has a new meaning. Sigh. She admits, however, that it's still just as chaotic. She stops, suddenly remembering something important. Dash. She quickly runs ahead, telling Essie an escort won't be necessary. She's heading to Lord Jeffrey's lab and plans to deliver a ledger to him. With that task done, she thinks she can proceed with her next plan. Standing before a door, a sudden realization dawns on her, leaving her shocked. She asks Lord Jeffrey what he means, facing the cool, blue-haired man. The scene flashes back to Jeffrey working diligently at his desk the previous night. Creak. He leans back, satisfied that his temporary fix for counterfeit detector is complete. He falls into a moment of silent contemplation. Tap, tap. He finds it odd that he feels no sense of accomplishment from his work. Clack. An idea strikes him as he wonders if that could be the reason for his feeling. He recalls a tense family dinner, presided over by a stern, older man. He remembers how the little girl froze at the mention of Havannik, yet his father chose them anyway. Lost in thought, he takes a quiet sip of his drink. He suspects his father put that scoundrel on the list to use his influence. However, he also realizes his father made a backup plan, considering the girl's history with Havannik's sons. Lower, he concludes, this must be his father's way of acknowledging her feelings. He ponders his father's choice of Medali out of all the other candidates. A symbolic image shows the girl, her face obscured, holding the scales of justice. Creak. He believes she is smart enough to excel at whatever she chooses, but he thinks he wouldn't be so quick to decide her future for her. Considering her nature, he thinks it would be better for her to study mana science. He smiles faintly as a new idea begins to form. He decides he needs a moment to himself to think. He reflects that, until now, mana science was his only real interest. Erin happily greets Lord Jeffrey, as a concerned man's inner voice vows she won't be used for someone else's satisfaction. A silhouette of the girl falls against the starry night as she remains silent. Creak. The blue-haired man slowly opens a door, peering into the room. He looks on with a hint of confusion. In a memory, the little purple-haired girl beams at a maid. Step. The scene transitions past a row of tall, moonlit windows. In a flashback, a chibi version of the girl excitedly announces plans to produce more designs. The memory continues as she studies a design sheet, trying to decide what to make next. Jeffrey's thoughts reveal he believes his father has no idea what Erin truly wants, and that he wouldn't be so quick to decide her future. The flashback ends on an image of Erin's happy, contented smile. Jeffrey stands alone, his head bowed in contemplation. The scene shifts to a desk laden with scientific instruments and research papers. Back in the present, Erin asks Jeffrey what he means by his statement, to which he simply says it's as he told her. Confused, she wonders what he could possibly mean. He tells her she's free to do other things now, like play with friends or visit the library. Shocked by this sudden change, she asks if she is no longer his assistant. He calmly tells her she's free to quit, leaving her completely stunned. She panics internally, wondering why his attitude has changed and what this means for her plans. She insists she doesn't want to quit, and he clarifies he's not kicking her out, but she argues that she wants to work. With teary eyes, she pleads to keep working in his lab. Tap. He gently explains that staying will only make it harder for her to discover what she truly wants. Swish. His hand rests on a document, as he admits he never asked her about her own dreams. He encourages her to be honest, suggesting she wants to study mana science. Believing her true dream is elsewhere, he feels he's been selfishly standing in her way. Holding her plaid bag, he explains that while he can't help with business, mana science is all he knows. He urges her to learn from her grandfather instead of wasting time with him. He watches her silently, waiting for her response. Kneeling before her, he gently takes her hand and offers her a scroll. He places the scroll in her hands, expressing his confidence that she will succeed in whatever she chooses. Heartbroken, she wonders if she's of no use to him anymore. He seems taken aback by her words, asking where she heard such a thing. Crying, she declares that she wants to be a merchant, but also learn mana science from him. She earnestly asks if she can't be both his assistant and a merchant. He tells her she doesn't need to be his assistant to study mana science, and her face falls. Clench. She grips the scroll tightly in her small hand. Overcome with emotion, she shouts that she wants him to be her teacher, not anyone else. He seems confused by her outburst, reminding her they were talking about her studies as she grows flustered. Without another word, she turns and runs out of the room. He calls out her name as she flees. Running down the hall, she wonders what is wrong with him. She thinks about how he arbitrarily made her his assistant and is now just as suddenly dismissing her. She feels confused by his forlorn expression, thinking he's the one acting as if he's being abandoned. His words about wasting her time echo in her mind. A montage of their time spent working together flashes through her memory. Bang! She slams her hands against a door. She stands before the door, panting to catch her breath. Sniff. A close-up reveals her eyes are brimming with unshed tears. Wham! Shouting her reluctant acceptance, she throws her bag and scroll onto the floor. Clatter! She defiantly lays out her papers on a nearby desk, ready to work. Whack! With a frustrated huff, Erin slaps the ledger shut. Flip, flip. She riffles through the pages, declaring she's tried enough. Crumple. Contemplating her options, she crumples a page in her hand. In a flashback, Alphona recalls her reasoning for hiding the book under her desk instead of taking it home. The thought sends a jolt of pure terror through the librarian. Groan. Slumped over in despair, she panics, certain she will lose her job. FWIP. She tries to rationalize her situation, remembering it wasn't even a library book. Flinch. Her spiraling thoughts are cut short when someone calls her name. Spring. She leaps to her feet, nervously greeting Lady Erin. With her face cast in shadow, Erin ominously asks if she needs something. Russell. Erin calls Alphone's name again and asks if something looks familiar, making the librarian's heart stop. Slip. She slides a burnt page from the ledger across the desk, pointedly asking if Alphone recognizes it. Holding the damning evidence, a stunned Alphone can only whisper, "What?" The page reveals financial bribes as Alphone stammers, asking how and where she got it. Erin looks down, her expression unreadable and serious. A single tear falls as Alphone quietly admits that she did see the ledger. It's in. Erin turns away, coolly stating she needed it as Alphone collapses in despair. Erin asks if she knows whose ledger it is, and Alphone frantically denies any knowledge. A flashback shows she had skimmed the book out of curiosity but couldn't identify the owner. Flinch. Alphone tenses up as Erin asks if she wants to know how she found out who it belonged to. Erin pauses before revealing how she discovered the book's owner. Smile. Her expression shifts to a brilliant, innocent grin as she dismisses the question as unimportant. Flop. Alphone sinks to her knees as Erin correctly guesses she's more worried about what will happen now. Erin reveals the truth. Shocking Alphone. The ledger belongs to Lord Havenick. Spring. As Alphone jumps in alarm, Erin announces her plan to show the book to her grandfather, the Duke. Erin explains the book is useless if she keeps it to herself, leaving Alphone horrified. As Erin justifies her logic, Alphone's inner voice screams, "I'm done for." Alphonse imagines the Duke berating her for lax security and pictures her inevitable doom. Erin's tone softens as she tells a surprised Alphone that she came back because she thought of her. She claims she worried her grandfather might get angry with Alphone, which is why she stopped by. Overcome with emotion, Alphone drops to her knees before the young lady. She pleads desperately, explaining her family will end up on the streets if she's fired. Grin. A cunning smile touches Erin's lips as she listens to the librarian's plea for forgiveness. Flinch. Forgive a spy? She asks sharply, and Alphone flinches as if struck. Step, step. Erin begins to walk, noting she hardly ever talks to Lord Havenick. She recalls a past dinner where Havenick knew every detail of her work as Lord Geoffrey's assistant. Confronting the kneeling librarian, she concludes the spy had to be someone with access to both the lab and the library. "I'm right, aren't I?" she presses, and Alphone's guilty silence is all the answer she needs. Erin pouts, internally confirming that the lack of a denial means she's correct. She considers the grave danger she's in, realizing that prying further could cost her her life. A memory surfaces of Alphone's kind and gentle demeanor with children. Erin reveals she has been watching Alphone for a while, suspecting she was trying to steal their lab notes. Swish. But, she adds, Alphone never actually laid a hand on them. Kneeling down, Erin suggests that Alphone's conscience wouldn't let her go through with it. Gulp. Alphone swallows hard, the truth of the statement hitting home. Grin. As Alphone asks what she wants, Erin's face lights up with a cheerful, calculating smile. With a beaming expression, Erin lays out her plan. She wants Alphone to reveal Havenick's ledger at the House Council. A shocked Alphone points to herself, and Erin confirms that since she found it, she should be the one to report it. Alphone looks down, admitting her fear of being adopted by Lord Havenick. Swish! She reveals that her original plan was to seek help from Lord Geoffrey. Squeeze! Alphone clenches her dress, admitting to Aaron that things got complicated. A younger boy with purple hair sits on the floor, looking up with a solemn expression, with tears in her eyes. Alphone suggests a cover story where she pretends to have just found the ledger, ending with a weary sigh. The purple-haired boy's expression brightens with a sudden idea. He stands before Alphone, boldly offering to present the ledger himself, while she admits she can't be of much help. Smile. He beams, thanking Alphone with all his heart. Phew. Alphone lets out a sigh of relief. Spring. The boy straightens up, getting Alphone's attention for another request. Grin. With a mischievous look, he asks her to do just one more thing for him. Aaron assures Alphone it won't be dangerous, as a monstrous shadow with a wicked laugh looms behind her. Quiver, quiver. As Aaron asks sweetly if she trusts her, Alphone trembles with absolute terror. The scene shifts to a bright, sunlit day seen through the canopy of trees. Rustle. A footsteps onto the grassy ground. Alphone stands in a sun-dappled garden, her expression serious and resolved. She confronts a man, asking why he has called her all the way out there. The older man, Mr. Hilberg, offers her a polite good afternoon. Alphone calmly explains it's nothing serious as she begins to reveal why she summoned him. Remembering how she cried that Lady Aaron made her do this, Alphone glances toward the bushes where Aaron is hiding. Quiver. In a flashback, a terrified Alphone asks Aaron if she's sure the plan will work. Pop. From her hiding spot, Aaron confidently tells her not to worry. Aaron's claim that she's 65, sure it will work, sends Alphone into a fresh wave of despair. As Aaron cheers her on, a crying Alphone wonders how she ever got into this mess. The scene returns to Alphone greeting Mr. Hilberg in the sunny garden. Alphone tells Mr. Hilberg that she's heard something, catching his attention. Swish. Stating she heard he was looking for a book, she presents the ornate red ledger. A nervous Mr. Hilberg breaks into a sweat as she asks if this is the book he was searching for. He stammers her name, shocked that she was right. Noting that this is no ordinary book, Alphone presses him on why he wants it and what he plans to do with it. Jolt. Mr. Hilberg is visibly stunned by her declaration that she will reveal its contents at the House Council. As the librarian in charge, Alphone refuses to overlook the issue, prompting him to demand she hand it over. He claims to know the ledger's owner and says returning it will solve everything, but Alphone's expression remains firm. Flinch. She calls his bluff, accusing him of planning to frame her for the book's disappearance. Tremble. Mr. Hilberg realizes she was testing him and apologizes, admitting someone else told him who the owner was, as Aaron listens from the bushes. As the world swirls around him, he looks down, thinking it's all over. A surprised Alphone begins to explain why she really called him there. Resigned, Mr. Hilberg tells her to do as she wishes and asks her to excuse him. He tells her to do whatever she wants with the ledger, promising to testify to her innocence before the Duke. Alphone looks confused, asking how he can be so certain that she's innocent. From the shadows, a voice asks who ordered him, and he shocks them all by confessing he was the one who stole it. Hiding in the bushes, Aaron realizes Hilberg stole the ledger himself and wonders if this is connected to him being her safekeeper in her past life. Clench. She understands now that Hilberg was blackmailing Havannik, not the other way around, and marvels at his determination. The maid's gossip reveals a dark history. Mr. Hilberg's father was a notorious gambler. After becoming senile, his father relapsed, squandering their fortune until he was too frail to leave the house, leaving Hilberg to pay off the massive debt with his salary. Aaron understands this is why Hilberg was allowed to work far past the typical retirement age. Clenching his fist, Mr. Hilberg laments that his greed nearly involved an innocent person in his mess. Alphone calls out to Mr. Hilberg as he begins to walk away. She warns him that if he really stole the ledger, a simple apology won't be enough to fix things. Alphone states the worst-case scenario is death, but a defeated Mr. Hilberg replies that he would prefer that. He confesses he betrayed the Duke's trust and has no right to ask for mercy, leaving Alphone to listen with a pained expression. Silent. With a determined look in her golden eyes, Alphone watches him. Amidst the sunlit trees, a voice proposes a new plan. Mr. Hilberg walks away alone through the sparkling garden. Alphone stands her ground, watching him depart with a determined expression. Swish. Flop. As Aaron watches from the bushes, Alphone suddenly collapses with a groan. Quiver, quiver. Erin stands over the twitching librarian, reassuring her that she did a great job. Kneeling beside Alphone, Erin asks what she thinks, and the librarian replies that Mr. Hilberg won't side with Lord Haveneck anymore. A cheerful Erin declares that's good enough, while Alphone remains silent and thoughtful. Alphona asks if Lady Erin was giving him a chance to redeem himself, but Erin feigns ignorance. Fwish, fwish. Alfonsa quickly waves her hands, claiming she only wanted to eliminate any risks. Erin explains that if she had let Mr. Hilberg go, Alphone would have been framed and banished, a fate she couldn't allow. Alphone looks at her with newfound resolve, stating that they're in the same boat now. Touched, Alphone asks Lady Erin why she is going to such great lengths to help her. A flashback shows Alphone's surprised expression. In a memory, Erin tells Alphone she helps her because she likes smart people. Jump. The word smart startles Alphone in the present. Giggle. Stab. Erin cheekily adds that she's also a pushover, and Alphonse winces at the sharp truth. Erin earnestly promises that this time she will make sure Alphone doesn't get hurt. Yay. Thud. Erin excitedly tells her to prepare for the house council, but a weary Alphonse just sighs and slumps over. On the day of the council, the maids look on with proud and emotional expressions. Outside the grand mansion, the maids collectively think about how adorable Lady Erin looks. Erin stands ready in a beautiful and elaborate yellow dress. The maids gush over her appearance, but Erin thinks they are exaggerating. An older maid urges everyone to hurry, warning that Lady Erin will be late for the main hall. The maids bid Erin farewell for the evening as she heads out. Peeking out the carriage window, Erin admits to herself that she's getting nervous. A banner with the family crest is displayed as text explains the House Council is a major 3-day event. The process for the performance reports is explained. Materials are submitted, archived, and then projected during the presentation. The stakes are high, as the best presentation often receives the most funding for the future. Erin's inner thoughts reveal her simple plan. Just add a little chaos. The plan begins with Alphone innocently submitting the library's presentation materials. An archivist will mistake the materials for Lord Haveneck's report, believing it was mixed up. Ta-da! Haveneck will be shocked mid-presentation, as his top-secret ledger is projected for all to see. Erin anticipates he'll claim it's a plot, but the authenticity of the ledger is irrelevant. The real goal is to sway public opinion of Haveneck right when her adoption is announced. This will force a choice between Modal, a proven leader, and Haveneck, who is now publicly shamed. She knows that no matter how much reference supports Haveneck, the Duke will understand the political implications of his choice before the public. Squeeze. Erin clenches the fabric of her dress, wishing Lord Geoffrey was there so she wouldn't have to rush things. With him gone, she resolves to secure her place in Modal's family at all costs. An announcer welcomes the esteemed guests to the House Council. Clap, clap. The Duke makes his entrance, applauding the attendees. He greets the crowd, standing with his family, including Erin and 2 young boys. Overwhelmed, Erin thinks she's far more nervous than she expected to be. She remembers being lost in the crowd last year, unable to even see the stage. Badum. Her heart pounds in her chest as she stands beside a noble woman. Smile. The woman tells Erin not to be nervous and to just smile. She reassures Erin that she'll be attending with them every year now and will get used to it. Nearby, the 2 young boys, Avalon and Vimel, complain about the leech moving in with them. As one worries about sharing a room, the woman's voice cuts in sharply, calling their names. Flinch. Hearing their mother's stern tone, the 2 boys flinch with fear. With a sharp glare, the noblewoman reminds her sons she told them not to call Erin a leech. She sternly warns the 2 boys they'll be kicked out if they do it again, and one of them glares defiantly. Ha! Erin scoffs internally, thinking he can glare all he wants. The woman kindly offers her hand to Erin, but Erin politely declines, insisting she is all right. Asserting she can go in by herself, the woman smiles and accepts her confident decision. Clap, clap. As an announcer introduces Lords Avalon and Vimel Brano, the family applauds their entrance. Flinch. When the announcer calls out Lady Erin Brano, nobles in the crowd flinch at the official adoption. Murmur. Standing alone in the grand hall, a nervous Erin hears the crowd whispering. She tells herself to be brave, to silence the gossip, as her new mother directs her to an empty seat. The Duke sits in his grand chair, looking over the council with a commanding presence. Her new father notices her nervousness as she takes her place. Dash. Avalon quickly rushes to his seat, acknowledging the Duke's command. The scene shifts to a grand library, where the blue-haired Lord Geoffrey stands pensively. Glance. He turns his attention to Alphone as she organizes books on a shelf. Staring, Alphonse feels his intense gaze on her back, wondering why he's giving her the silent treatment. Alphone reminds Lord Geoffrey that the opening ceremony has started and asks if he's not going, but he replies that he skipped last year too. Flinch. She points out that Lady Erin will be there this year, which makes him flinch. Clack. Adjusting his glasses, Geoffrey asks if Erin was with Alphone in the library recently. He presses further, asking if Erin mentioned him, but Alphone says she said nothing in particular. Lord Geoffrey remains silent, lost in thought. Alphone recalls a moment when a confused Geoffrey misunderstood a situation. A finely wrapped gift box sits on the table. She remembers the box and assumes it must have been a cake he brought to make amends with Erin. The scene returns to the present, with Alphone standing before Geoffrey's desk. In a brief flashback, a younger Erin tells Geoffrey she wants to eat the cake he brought. A memory shows Geoffrey with a subtle, fond smile. In the memory, his wife looks on, asking if something is wrong. A sudden realization hits Geoffrey as his eyes widen in shock. Rustle. He stands up from his chair abruptly. Gasp. Alphone is startled by his sudden movement as he asks, "What?" Bow. She quickly apologizes if her question was out of line. Alphone explains that from what she's seen, he's the person Erin is fondest of, and he smiles faintly. He lets out a sigh, stating that Erin needs to be raised in a proper family. Squeeze. Clenching his fist, he laments that he is not qualified to give her the help she needs. Alphone asks if Erin said that herself, but Geoffrey is momentarily confused. He thinks to himself that he can't help her, because she doesn't even want to become a mana-scientist. Alphone counters his logic, arguing that a child doesn't have to follow in their parents' footsteps. She adds that Aang can learn much more by joining Modali's family, leaving her own Chibi self-confused. Alphone points out the Duke is a great merchant, but Geoffrey reveals the Duke wants Havnik to adopt Irina's plan he vehemently opposes. Alphone is visibly shocked by this troubling revelation. Internally, a small Geoffrey concedes that everything she said is true. Alphone finds it interesting that he has a point, and notes he didn't even try to deny her claims. Deciding it's time to leave, Alphone asks if he has made his decision, and offers to take the books to the council herself. Lord Geoffrey remains silently contemplative, arms crossed. Alphonse calls out his name, trying to get his attention. He realizes he was subconsciously making up an excuse to distance himself from her. Squeeze. He grips his arm, thinking no, as he rejects his own reasoning. Mumble, mumble. He mutters to himself about only thinking of his own feelings, while Alphone watches. Realizing he's not talking to her, Alphone decides to wrap things up and leave him to his thoughts. Geoffrey reflects on still grieving for his wife and Viola in the library. Geoffrey questions if Erin could be truly happy with someone like him in his current state. Havnik murmurs in thought, while Alphone's hand comes down with a soft tap on a book, realizing Havnik's earlier worries. Havnik flinches as he hears his wife and Viola described as sweet. Geoffrey recalls not knowing them well as he was new to the castle, while Alphone is seen sitting at a desk below. Alphonse stares forward intently, her golden eyes wide. Alphonse thinks she knew things, even from their fleeting conversations, holding some papers. A younger Erin, with dark purple hair, smiles happily over a book and treats. Geoffrey, a woman, and two young girls, including Erin, share a happy moment at a table. Havnik's intense golden eyes peer over his glasses. Spring. Havnik quickly stands up, surprising Alphone, who flinches. A chibi Erin blushes, heart pounding, as she agrees with the unexpected statement. Havnik, with dark blue hair, tells Alphone he will be back around evening, and she questions his time frame. Where is Havnik planning to go as a hen carries a box? Bang. Alphone looks shocked, standing alone in the grand room. Alphone, agitated, mutters about having urgent affairs of her own. Alphonse looks over her shoulder with a questioning gaze. Alphone asks if the three men in uniform are the guards. Swish. Alphone asks the dark-haired guard if they have business here, and he gives a slight nod. Two guards restrain Alphonse, who cries out in pain. Alphonse wonders what's happening, as the dark-haired guard announces the Duke ordered them to bring her to him. Alphonse looks distressed as the guard advises her to follow their orders quietly. Erin sips her drink, Thinking it's odd, Alphonse hasn't arrived, while a dark-haired maid offers fruit. Aaron calls for Sarah, the maid, who quickly responds. Sarah, the maid, looks surprised as Aaron asks her to go to the library. Aaron explains that Miss Librarian has something for her but hasn't arrived, making her worried. Sarah agrees to check the library for Lady Aaron, promising to return, and Aaron thanks her. Aaron looks thoughtful, murmuring, Aaron wonders where those two people are headed, watching them walk away. The Duke thinks about seeking guidance for a significant matter, but a white-haired man assures him it was urgent and not to worry. 3 men stand in the richly decorated room, 2 facing the man in the dark cloak. A man in a dark cloak, Hilberg, looks down, questioning if he heard correctly. The Duke asks Hilberg if he understands what he confessed, and Hilberg confirms. The Duke admits to having committed an unforgivable crime. Flutter. A single piece of paper floats down amidst a scattering of books in an ornate box. Swish. A gloved hand holds a red ornate book, the Duke thinking it's just as the good teacher told him. The Duke, holding the red book, expresses surprise that Havennick's ledger was in Alphonse's hands. Alphonse looks distressed, stammering a reply as the Duke questions why she stole the ledger. Alphonse looks intently at the Duke, correcting him that he's got it wrong. Hilberg, the man in the dark cloak, declares he planned to steal the ledger by himself, as Alphonse watches. Hilberg explains the librarian merely found where he hid the ledger, and he dragged her into this, leaving Alphonse shocked. Alphonse wonders if Hilberg is trying to take all the blame for himself, and why. Alphonse looks worried, pondering if there's an underlying reason. Alphonse tells Hilberg she plans to reveal the ledger contents at the House Council, and he asks her not to interfere. Hilberg promises to keep Alphonse's involvement a secret if she stays quiet. Alphonse questions why Hilberg is doing this and if he is after money like her. Glance. A small, purple-haired Aaron peeks from behind bushes, secretly observing the conversation. Hilberg tells Alphonse he cannot disclose his reasons. Nod. Hilberg looks down sadly, acknowledging her words. Alphonse says she understands, but advises Hilberg not to do anything he will regret, recalling his past words. Squeeze. Mr. Hilberg's hands clench as he worries his actions were seen as purely selfish. Standing over a kneeling Mr. Hilberg and Alphonse, the Duke questions if his pay was not enough motivation. The Duke holds up the damning ledger, sarcastically daring them to make an example of him. His eyes narrow as he reads a critical detail. The document was authorized by Havennick Bruno. The Duke demands to know what their ultimate plan was, but he is met with confusion. Upon learning they intended to reveal the ledger at the council, the Duke flatly rejects the idea. He demands they explain exactly how they plan to execute this public reveal. Holding the book, the Duke has a sudden, critical realization about the plot. He confronts Hilberg, asking who ordered the theft, but the man denies he was following anyone's orders. Flinch. The intense accusation makes both Mr. Hilberg and Alphonse recoil in terror. The Duke bellows that their actions are a grave insult to the many years he has trusted them. As the Duke angrily accuses him of lying, Mr. Hilberg frantically insists it is all a misunderstanding. Grit. He threatens both of them with death if they do not speak the truth now. Alphonse finally shouts that everything was done for Lady Aaron, causing the Duke to flinch. The Duke stares ahead, silently processing the weight of her confession. Meanwhile, a worried Aaron asks a maid if the librarian has gone missing. The maid confirms from the empty library that she cannot find Alphonse anywhere. Aaron is shocked to learn that Alphonse was last seen with Lord Geoffrey. She quickly asks if Alphonse is still with him, but the maid doubts it. The maid explains that Lord Geoffrey left alone, his destination a mystery to everyone. Aaron reflects that the maid, Sarah, wouldn't know the whole truth anyway. Sarah tries to reassure Lady Aaron, saying she told other maids to join the search. She promises that they will report back the moment the librarian is found. Aaron now waits alone in the courtyard, looking small and concerned. Why? She lets out a frustrated cry as a tiny maid vows to lecture the librarian later. She reasons that Alphonse wouldn't get cold feet, as skipping her report would mean getting fired instantly. Aaron also finds Raphael's abrupt disappearance highly suspicious, especially since his carriage is gone. She wishes she could go and investigate the situation for herself. Sigh. But she feels helpless, admitting she wouldn't even know what to do when she got there. A boy's voice suddenly shouts, "Look, the leech is there," and Aaron turns in confusion. Her 2 new brothers, Avalon and Weimel, appear with looks of disdain. In another area, a boy with glasses named Fredelman asks a red-haired boy if he has seen Erin. The red-haired boy guesses she's with the Duke, recalling how distracted she was earlier. Fredelman looks on with concern, certain she had something important to tell him. One of the boys urges his brother on, shouting, "Get her! Weimel!" Snatch. Weimel roughly grabs Erin's arm as she tells him to let go. While dragging her away, they dismiss her protests, claiming they aren't doing anything. The boy offers a present, but Erin angrily accuses them of just being mean. FWIP, he dangles a frog in front of her face, daring her to kiss it. Weimel watches in disgust as Erin prepares to kiss the frog. While she thinks how immature they are, they mock her, asking if she only feels brave because their grandpa is on her side. Grr. The taunts infuriate her as she wonders if they will ever learn their lesson. Spin a voice calls out her name, and she turns, startling the two boys. Noticing someone is coming, Avalon quickly tells Weimel that it's time to run. Jump. As the frog leaps to freedom, the boys order Ein to follow, but she refuses to move. Push. Enraged by her defiance, one of the boys shoves her with all his might. Erin tumbles backward, her arms flailing as she loses her balance. Squeeze. She shuts her eyes in terror, bracing for the inevitable fall. The two boys whip around, startled by the unexpected arrival. Just as she falls, a brown-haired boy with glasses rushes in and catches her. Phew, he anxiously asks if Erin is okay, and she quietly reassures him that she's fine. He sighs in relief, while Erin realizes she heard his voice call out from a distance. The four children now stand in a tense confrontation in the middle of the courtyard. Step. One of the brothers approaches, scoffing with relief that it's only a boy named Nux. The two brothers stand defiantly before Erin and her new protector. The boy with glasses nervously spreads his arms to shield a worried Erin behind him. Enraged, Weimel screams at the boy, daring him to try and protect her from his next move. Flinch. The boy shuts his eyes tightly, bracing himself for an attack. Boom. A sudden burst of green magic swirls around the boy's feet. Flip. Weimel is suddenly sent flying backward as Erin lets out a startled cry. Erin looks on in complete confusion, wondering what just happened. Weimel sits stunned in a puddle of water, tears of humiliation welling in his eyes. Flush. He grits his teeth and lets out a frustrated scream of pure rage. Suddenly, the red-haired boy appears, shouting and pointing toward them to get a lord's attention. Seeing they've been caught, Avalon panics while a defiant Weimel merely huffs. Wahaha Erin bursts into uncontrollable laughter while the boy with glasses looks on, confused. The red-haired boy, Fredelman, asks if they're okay, privately gloating that his bluff worked, and Nux calls out his name. Phew! Relieved, Erin happily grabs Fredelman's hand, praising his perfect timing. Nux watches the two of them with a puzzled expression. The scene shifts to a leather-bound book, identified as a ledger detailing bribery and smuggling. At his desk, the Duke angrily recalls telling his son to clean up his mess, only for him to make it worse by lying to his own father. Sigh. The Duke clasps his hands, weighed down by his son's failings. In a memory, a woman with dark hair tells her husband he has always been too harsh on their son, Havenik. A younger, blue-haired Raphaeron looks away, coolly insisting that he hasn't been harsh at all. He argues that Hanik needs to act like the eldest, while his wife calls him stubborn. She explains that their son only lies because he's scared of being scolded, as a young boy listens from behind a door. She pleads with her husband to understand the pressure Havenik feels from being compared to his younger brothers. She gently touches his cheek, softly calling his name, Raphaeron. Acknowledging his high expectations, she reminds him that their eldest son is still a child who needs time to learn. With a gentle smile, she reminds him that Havenik is his son. The memory fades to a somber image of the woman lying lifelessly, a cloth covering her face. Back in the present, the Duke remains at his desk, silent and lost in thought. A man with an eye patch reports to the Duke that he has locked up both individuals as ordered. The man with the eye patch states he will decide their prisoners' fates after the council, and his subordinate agrees. The butler informs the Duke his carriage is waiting, and the Duke replies that he will be right there. A vision of a man standing behind Erin underscores the need to ensure her safety. A gloved hand carefully places the incriminating ledger into a drawer. The Duke stands tall, a confident and knowing smile on his face. The scene shifts to the cold stone walls of a dungeon. Alphonse sits alone in a cell, dejectedly wondering how she ended up in such a mess. She thinks about how Mr. Hilberg fell silent after ruining their plan and how the council will be over soon. Russell. Wondering if her work was for nothing, she finds herself wishing she had a snack. A pair of boots steps into view outside her cell, and she looks up in surprise. She rushes to the bars, desperately calling for the guard and begging to see Lady Erin. The guard shoves her back, angrily ordering the prisoner to be quiet and never utter that name again. Clutching the bars, Alphonse desperately insists that she knows she's a prisoner, but she must be heard. A calm voice cuts in, saying, "There you are, having finally located her." Alphonse looks up in utter shock, asking the visitor what he's doing here. Murmur. The House Council meeting begins in the grand echoing hall. Seated alone amidst the proceedings, Erin sighs, her spirit deflating as she thinks it's all a disaster. The council continues despite Alphone's absence, as the speaker calls for the next report. Erin grows uneasy, realizing Havenick's presentation is being far better received than in her past life. Lord Havenick stands before the council, presenting a report on his failed businesses. Erin watches in disgust as he twists the truth, painting himself as a hero to the economically clueless nobles. With perfect dramatic timing and charming looks, he easily wins over the swooning ladies in the audience. However, those in the crowd with actual financial knowledge notice that his numbers simply don't add up. But seeing that the stern Duke Raphael remains silent, they too hold their tongues. Sighing, Erin deduces he never planned to use logic, intending only to smooth talk his way through from the start. As his presentation finally comes to an end, the atmosphere in the room shifts. In the now nearly empty hall, only a few key figures remain seated at the long table. Erin walks beside the Duke, anxiously wondering why Modali has not yet arrived. Wish. She turns in surprise as a voice suddenly apologizes for being late. A disheveled man, Modali, rushes in, explaining he was delayed because his son Nux came down with a sudden fever. The Duke asks if the child is all right, and Modali explains it was mana overload, but he was stabilized before he left. Erin is shocked, realizing this event is happening much earlier than it did in her past. The Duke expresses his relief, glad to hear the child is safe. Grin. Across the table, Havenick smirks, seeing an opportunity to attack. Havenick questions Modali's judgment for bringing his son, but Modali insists the fever was completely unexpected. With a thoughtful expression, Havenick implies there must have been warning signs. He presses further, asking if Modali was truly so oblivious to his son's condition. Havenick coldly accuses him of negligence, leaving Modali speechless and ashamed. Rising to his feet, Havenick acknowledges Modali's importance in the guild, but publicly questions his fitness as a father. Clap. Several nobles applaud in agreement, declaring that Lord Havenick is right. Clench. Erin's hand tightens as she fumes, knowing the crowd is too ignorant to understand mana overload. She watches with grim determination, realizing Havenick is about to gain the upper hand. Her expression hardens with resolve as she prepares to act. Spring. She decides she must be the one to vouch for Modali, or no one else will. A new voice cuts in, asking if they feel no shame bickering in front of a child. Lord Geoffrey makes a grand entrance, shocking the assembled nobles into silence. He calmly rests his hand on the back of a chair, his presence commanding the room. A stunned Havenick can only sputter his name in disbelief. Swish. Geoffrey offers a cool and simple good evening. He is identified as the third son of the powerful Brano house. He carries himself with an air of unshakable confidence and purpose. Erin stares up at him, her eyes wide with surprise and awe. Even the stoic Duke appears taken aback by Geoffrey's sudden appearance. A past memory surfaces of a quiet wish that Lady Erin not be adopted by Lord Havenick. The Duke looks at Geoffrey, suddenly wondering if he was the one who held that secret hope. Havenick angrily objects to Geoffrey's interference, but the Duke silences him, choosing to hear Geoffrey out. The Duke challenges Geoffrey directly, asking to hear the plan that has made him so confident. He then asks Modali for his opinion, who readily agrees, leaving a baffled Erin to wonder what is happening. Grit. Havenick clenches his jaw in fury, retorting that he has plenty more to say. He accuses Geoffrey of being a neglectful hermit, who only uses his birthright for his own convenience. Havenick scoffs at the idea of him raising a child, but Geoffrey calmly challenges the notion that he's done nothing for the family. Crossing his arms, Geoffrey coolly announces that he has already started his own business. Jump. He calls on Viscount Deuce for confirmation, who nervously affirms his statement. Glance. The Viscount continues, preparing to reveal the details of the business. He announces that the new business is a joint venture between Lord Geoffrey and Lady Arryn. A dark-haired nobleman scoffs that it has only been a few months, yet he has already commercialized another's designs. Murmur. As the nobleman passes, guests gossip about owning one of the popular new dryers he has produced. A pair of dark boots stops as a voice declares they need to get one thing straight. A man states that the adoption has been discussed for a while, but another man has remained silent on the matter. A man with light purple hair and golden eyes stares forward with a calm, unwavering gaze. His intense, golden-eyed stare continues, holding the room's attention. The purple-haired man insists he is not plotting anything, merely giving Arryn options, and questions why the other is so agitated. The man with dark blue hair faces the purple-haired man, who gives him a defiant look. A memory reveals a plan to build a research center to commercialize inventions and educate Arryn there. The blue-haired man accuses the other of having the most to gain, but the purple-haired man dismisses this, calling his plan superior. The blue-haired man presses him, asking why he would train her at the center instead of a proper academy. A dark thought bubble suggests it is a way to exploit her talents for his own gain. Flinch. The purple-haired man recoils as he is accused of using Arryn's brilliance to recoup his losses. The man is reminded of his spontaneous mining venture and how he greatly understated the project's losses. The blue-haired man questions if he planned to cover his losses with other projects, prompting an angry denial and a demand for proof. A dark image of the man is overlaid with text mentioning an unaccounted-for down payment of $10 million. Rustle. The blue-haired man produces a document, asking if the other remembers his words, shocking a young woman in a flashback. A tearful Arryn confesses that she was the one who gave Alphone the piece of paper from the ledger. The blue-haired man holds the incriminating evidence with a confident, knowing expression. The story's title appears, This Wasn't in My Adoption Plan, Chapter 32. From a dark dungeon, a voice desperately pleads with Lord Geoffrey. In a flashback, a woman tells Lord Geoffrey through prison bars that Lady Arryn will need the paper she is handing him tomorrow, and he admits he was skeptical. Lord Geoffrey realizes from the man's terrified expression that the information he received is true. Sweating profusely, the purple-haired man denies knowing anything about the paper, calling it rubbish. He furiously lists the massive costs of his mine, arguing that the other man knows nothing of business and demands to know how to plug every leak. Challenged to prove the paper is from his ledger, the blue-haired man calmly meets his gaze. Tilt. Arryn tilts her head, looking up from her large chair with an innocent expression. The Duke asks what she means, and Arryn explains that diamond mines are usually in treeless plains with many ranches. Arryn points out the contradiction in Lord Havenick's report, which claimed timber was cheaper than food, and she silently urges Lord Geoffrey to agree. She reminds Lord Geoffrey of what he told her during the presentation, and he seems to be processing the memory. With a faint smile, Lord Geoffrey thinks to himself that she is performing as expected of his prodigy. Lord Havenick angrily dismisses her claim as nonsense, insisting the girl was sitting alone all morning. He furiously accuses the child of lying in front of all the adults, causing Arryn to gasp. Lord Geoffrey calmly asks Havenick how he can be so sure, chiding him for yelling at a child, which only enrages Havenick further. A dark-haired man interrupts their bickering, declaring that this is not the place for it. The Duke addresses the man, agreeing that Lord Havenick's motives for adopting Lady Arryn do not seem benevolent. He adds that it is also troubling that Lord Havenick has never once called Arryn by her name. The dark-haired man reveals he only intended to adopt her to protect her from Havenick and will gladly step down for Lord Geoffrey. The Duke listens in silence, his expression thoughtful. He turns to Lord Geoffrey, asking what prompted his change of heart. Lord Geoffrey admits that he was initially very hesitant to step forward as a candidate. In a dark memory, he recalls his mission to uncover the truth behind the mysterious explosion that killed his family. He is shown kneeling, holding a loved one in a final, heartbreaking embrace. At a graveside, he vows to find out who was responsible for their deaths. He resolves that he could not let them go without uncovering the truth. Standing before a cross, he remembers thinking he lacked the time and energy to properly care for a child. He reflects that it would be unfair to Arryn to have a father known as a mad scientist. A fond memory shows a younger Arryn proudly presenting a drawing to him in his study. He recalls her adorable, happy face as she enjoyed a treat he had given her. Remembering a time she cried, He thinks about how his own heart felt heavy seeing her sad. He remembers a fond moment of a woman and a young girl sharing a joyful, loving hug. Lord Geoffrey concludes his thoughts, realizing at last that he could not let Aaron go. He stands somberly, surrounded by a floor littered with papers representing his memories. Each memory on the floor shines like a star blinking in the night sky. He recalls a younger Aaron, sweetly presenting him with her drawings. Back in the present, he stands silently before a grave in the cemetery. Swish! He reaches out, softly speaking the name Viola. He thinks that Aaron is as lovely as Viola and as full of life as his darling. Lost in thought, he remains silent before the headstone. He kneels down, placing a hand on the grave in a moment of quiet grief. The scene returns to the meeting, where Aaron stands in her fine pink dress. Lord Geoffrey argues to the Duke that a genius like Aaron will thrive best with her own kind. With Aaron's hopeful eyes fixed on him, he confidently asks, who could be better to raise her? Squeeze. Aaron nervously clenches her fists, her face flushing with anticipation. The Duke looks down at Aaron as she gazes up at him, awaiting his decision. Aaron finally speaks, declaring that she wants Lord Geoffrey to be her father. With her choice made, she beams with pure, unbridled joy. A dark, mysterious presence thinks to itself that this outcome is better than expected. A small, cloaked figure stands apart, observing the applauding nobles. The shadowy form dissolves and travels like smoke. Step, bare feet land on a wooden floor as the entity announces, "I'm back." A woman asks the cloaked figure where it has been, and it cryptically replies that it was watching something amusing. A hand stops writing magical script as the figure mentions an interesting turn of events at an old friend's house. The woman asks who this old friend is, looking out over a city filled with crows.